Hello. I call the meeting to order for the November 14th study session. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
The record will reflect that all members of council are present.
Perfect. We're going on to current business. First item is clarification of items on the consent calendar. Councilmember Kleiman, do you need clarification?
No.
Councilmember Stapleton?
I have none.
Councilmember Grant?
None.
Councilmember Weigand?
None for me.
Councilmember Avery?
None.
Mayor Pro Tem? And I have none myself. Moving on, next is a discussion about the nighttime closure of public restrooms. Tara?
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. This is a follow-up item from your September 26th study session where staff first introduced the topic of closing some or all of the city's public restrooms at night. Council had a pretty thorough discussion that evening and asked us to come back with a proposed plan on how we could approach this. So for the month of October, I'm waiting for my slide to come up. There we go. For the month of October, we had a staff working group from Public Works and the City Manager's Office, Police Department, and Recreation and Senior Services thoroughly look at this issue. We looked at contracting, we looked at staffing, we looked at the equipment that would be required, and we put together a proposed plan to talk through with you this evening. Again, we have 34 public restrooms in the city. Some of those are by the beaches, some of those are within our city parks, and some of those are in more urban areas, such as the Washington Street restroom, the 28th Street restroom, that get a different type and level of use throughout the year. There are a couple things in your packet. One of them is the spreadsheet. I will not speak to this directly, but there's some copies in the back of those in the audience didn't get a copy of it. And we also have a map within the council packet that is a map of all of the facilities. Leilani could give me a hand there. That's also color-coded. Each location is mapped out here along with the color code that we gave it on the spreadsheet so you can identify it more easily. So here's the proposal we have for you this evening. Of the 34 public restrooms that we have, 6 of those restroom facilities already have automated locks on them. So the balance, of course, is 28. And of those 28, another 5 restrooms are slated for retrofitting in 2024, and one is a complete rebuild in 2025. So staff estimated the cost of putting automatic locks on 23 restrooms at about $450,000. This cost is based upon an estimate we had from another contractor earlier this year that did some of our previous retrofitting work, adding automated locks to some of our bathrooms. Also, we estimated the annual cost to maintain would be about $122,000 a year. That is if we did the balance, all of the other restrooms in the city. If we chose just to do some of those restrooms, about 15 of those would still need to be automated. Again, some of those are slated for reconstruction, so the balance of those that we would choose to do is about $300,000, and the cost to annually maintain that set of bathrooms would be about $87,000. And if you're looking at your spreadsheet, I'm talking about these are now the restrooms that are in phases 2 and 3. Phase 1, already done. Phases 2 and 3 would be the next step. And then if we did all four of them, as my first slide was, about $400,000. In the meantime, we know there was some concern because this is a very large project, and staff estimates it could take anywhere from 10 to 14 months just to do phases 2 and 3 with our contracting, the fabrication work that has to be done, or up to 2 years to do the full project. In the meantime, should council desire, we can retain a security contractor to manually lock all of the restrooms. The price you see here is to manually lock all the restrooms in the city each night and unlock them in the morning. And again, we talked about phasing. As I just mentioned, we do have some facilities that have been locked at night already. We looked at phases 2 and 3 as 15 facilities, and those 15 facilities were next in our hierarchy of the ones we get complaints about loitering and vandalism in. That phase, again, would be about 10 to 14 months if we went through phases 2 and 3. And then phase 4 would be the remaining restrooms in the city. Should the council desire for us to have a consistent policy to our public restrooms, we can close all of them at night, and we expect that would take up to another 12 months to change all of those locks out to auto-locking. And my final slide thank you, Leilani, is we have a few questions for you this evening, Council. Staff is seeking your direction on if we proceed with the automated locks as we've proposed, which phases to implement, if not all of them, and if Council should desire for us to have a security contractor manually lock the restrooms until we can convert all of the restroom facilities to automatic locking. And that concludes the presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you guys for putting this together so quickly. You want to start up here? Perfect. Why don't I start up here real quick before we go out to the public? This has been one of those pieces that I think was pretty eye-opening when you start looking at other cities and what some of our neighbors have been doing. And I was surprised and I think sometimes thankful that we haven't had to deal with this yet because we haven't had the same issues over the years. And maybe they are getting a little bigger and we're trying to combat them in lots of different ways. So I thank all my fellow council members, especially Councilmember Kleiman, for bringing this up and championing it so much. And staff, we know this has not been a light lift, so we're very thankful for that as well. And let's go to public real quick. That works. Public comments on this? Just feel free to come right up to the microphone. We'll give you a couple minutes to chat.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. Thank you, council members. We're very happy in the Port Streets that you are taking on this. We have had some significant problems in the Port Streets in our restrooms, and I think the reason that I'm here tonight is to say we really support that you're considering closing the restrooms, and we're very hopeful that you'll put the Port Streets 2 restrooms earlier on your list and not in phase 4. We've had fire bombs in those restrooms. We've had fires in the restrooms. We've had significant vandalism even just last week. And we do have a significant problem with teenagers that loiter. So we don't yet have a homeless problem, but we do have a significant problem. We're concerned that if you close the other restrooms, people may come to the Port Streets, and we are in the Port Streets 1,070 homes. Many of them are wood-based, and with the fires that we've had in the restrooms, that's a problem for us too. So our board has written you a letter and asked you please to consider the Port Streets in phase 1 or phase 2. I know it's small, but we have a security staff that's there at night. So if you wanted to put locks in on a temporary basis, we'd do that for free. So we'd close them at night for you. So I'll leave you with this letter, and thank you for looking at this.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Ruth Kobayashi, and I live in Harbor Cove, right across the street from some friends. And I'm going to read to you an email that I sent over the weekend in case you haven't had a chance to see it. I'd like to encourage you to direct the city staff to lock all city restrooms at the same time that the corresponding city facilities close. There is no reason for restrooms to be open past the closing hours of their corresponding facilities. Leaving the restrooms open puts residents at risk by creating an environment that runs counter to the city's commitment to street exits to support services for transient and a greater commitment to public safety. To do anything less is an open invitation for transients and others to come to Newport Beach, where we make it easier to live on the streets, alleys, benches, on city and private properties. While it may take some extra work and resources to do so, I ask that you implement these closures for all restrooms to be closed at facility closing hours immediately. A phased-in approach furthers the risk to the residents of Newport Beach and is not needed. It takes a willingness to make the changes required to decrease transients roaming our residential streets and increasing street exits into support services. I'm confident in your willingness to make those changes that nearly all of our neighboring cities have made. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Samantha Maya. I live in Irvine Terrace, and I received an email saying that we may close all the restrooms except for Irvine Terrace Park. And I understand as a mom and a housewife, we need to trim the budget. I get it. I would like to please ask that we also close Irvine Terrace and perhaps find a restroom that's not in a park, in a residential area, to leave open. Why? Because I personally have seen homeless people come from Pacific Coast Highway, sleep, wash, bathe, stay in the park, harass children playing soccer, harass police officers who come to help us out, and we would just like to not maximize this, but dissuade it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. I'll try to just make a short statement. My name is Steve McNichols. I've lived down by the Newport Pier for about 50 years. So we got the problem with the bathrooms, as you know. I'll just give you a factual statement. The last 2 nights, we've had the homeless guy that's been down there on the peninsula at Marina Park. Since they're closing the bathroom and locking it at 15th Street, guess what? Doesn't take a rocket science to figure out. Now they're in my neighborhood. They're at the public bathroom at the base of the Newport Pier. So, and I guess the talk is they don't want to lock that one. But anyway, so if it's open, guess where they're going to go? I've had the cops out there the last 2 mornings, but yet the guy will be there again tonight. So I'll call the cops again tonight. And now I got the thing that says there's no sleeping in the bathroom. So we'll see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi there. I'm Eric Spitz. I'm a resident and owner and live on 19th Street in Newport Beach. Within my 250 feet of my place, I've got 10% of your bathrooms. Marina Park, and more specifically, I want to talk about 19th Street. We have tons of homeless hanging out there. We have homeless sleeping on benches. We find homeless even in some of our residences of the duplexes on the bottom stories. This is a hazard for the people that live there. This is a hazard for everybody out there, and it's a complete residential area. If you need a bathroom open there, we recommend that you open it at the commercial site at Marina Park. They have 4 bathrooms over there, 1 upstairs for the employees, and then 3 downstairs and 1 on the back, which is very easy to be available if someone needs it. If you're looking for restrooms for the boaters that come in or something like that, you've got plenty of slips. You got 177 spots in that 10.5 acres that you have there. On 19th Street, it's a complete residential area. You know, over the past few years, we've seen this place go from a beautiful 1-story place where they used to have the boating things going out of there and the sailing classes out of there, to now it's still a 1-story, but it's 2 stories tall. And they built an echo chamber. So when you flush the toilets, all the residents hear it. I can't hear the toilets from on my left. I can't hear the toilets on my right. I can't hear the toilets below me. But when that one goes across the street, everybody hears it. Not only that, they have already taken out the air dryers there because of the noise. So we've got issues with, these are our issues. We appreciate your help in this matter, and we would love to have that thing closed. We'd love to have that one removed, actually, but we'd love to have it closed. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers on this end?
And I have pictures if you need of homeless or anything. Need that? Not now.
We're probably good. Thank you.
Mayor Blom, members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier. One of the advantages of not being elected is I don't have to represent anybody else. So I seem to have a opinion, which I expressed in writing, that differs from the great majority of the opinions that you received. I do have some additional comments. Number one, at your last study session, I seem to recall one of the city employees was telling you that even if your goal is to lock restrooms overnight, auto-locking is not always the best solution. And indeed, some of the homeless people, if you're trying to prevent them from sleeping there, actually find that an advantage and like the security of going there before the auto-lock locks and not being disturbed by any other homeless person. So are we going to, after auto-locking these, have somebody go around and check that nobody is being locked in? And I don't know if that's in the budget here that you're being told or not. Secondly, Ms. Kobayashi mentioned synchronizing things with the closing time of the city facilities. And in addition to the harbor, one of the other city facilities we have is the beaches. And despite our signage on those, the beaches actually never close. So I fear that people do have legitimate reasons to be there at all hours. And by hoping to spend money to solve one problem, you may be creating another public health problem. And remind you, as I said at the last study session, and I believe this is correct, the city of San Diego thought it would be a great idea to close all of their restrooms at night. And the result of that was a hepatitis A outbreak among their homeless population, which could spread to the others. And so they had to go back to opening the restrooms and indeed actively telling people where they were available at night. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comments on this item, we're going to bring it back up here. I'm going to start with Councilmember Kleiman on this one.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, staff and the police department for all the preparation, as well as Public Works. I know it's put a lot of time and energy, and our Parks and Rec department as well. Sadly, since Councilmember Stapleton and I first raised this item for consideration, we had an unhoused individual pass away in the Bonita Creek Park restroom, which is located inland behind the Boys and Girls Club and adjacent to CDM High School. He died alone in a bathroom at 2 a.m. from what looks in the coroner's report to be an overdose. For me, this tragic scenario is reason enough to close and lock all of our public restrooms nightly. Some of the many other arguments in favor of closure are the taxpayer resources that are currently being utilized to maintain and repair these restrooms after there's vandalism or other incidents, some of which we heard about from public comments today. Staff estimates that we are currently spending about $90,000 a year just to abate graffiti, which seems to be occurring nightly. And this doesn't include costs for all of the other issues like fireworks being set off and fires that were, again, mentioned. We also don't keep any of our community facilities open 24 hours. The Civic Center, our libraries, parks, and beaches are closed and locked nightly. Lastly, it's simply bad policy to leave our restrooms open to the public overnight when all the cities around us have theirs locked. And staff has now confirmed that all of the Orange County cities are locking most or all of their restrooms. At our last study session on this issue, there seemed to be support both from council and from staff to close them. The questions are how many and how quickly. As we also heard tonight, I don't think that we can phase the closure, leaving those located in or adjacent to residential neighborhood parks open. I don't support phasing for that reason unless it's all done very quickly. Otherwise, where do you draw the line? Bonita Creek, for example, is in phase 3 as it's currently proposed. Staff has closed 7 bathrooms in response to recurring issues immediately and without issue. So I would suggest that we do the same with the remaining 25 in a coordinated manner. That could be a hybrid approach of utilization of our public works team, janitorial vendor, security contractor, at staff's discretion, of course. So I would propose that staff return as soon as possible with the appropriate vendor contracts to manually lock and unlock all of the restrooms nightly from 10 p.m. when beaches and parks and other facilities are closed to 6 a.m. when they open, and phase over to automatic locks over time we're already planned for in our CIP or wherever feasible and not cost prohibitive. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wygant.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Kleiman, for taking the lead on this and for your opening remarks on this item. I think that you're pretty spot on, and I'm supportive of it. As we discussed this item last time, I did have some, concerns about locking certain restrooms, at high intensity levels, not neighborhoods, but in, say, McFadden Square where there is use down there. And so that was a little bit more of my worry. But I think what staff has come up with is great as far as this spreadsheet. I do think that there are areas where we can implement all of them, and I would like to look to that as well from staff. I did have some questions though. Who is currently locking phase one? Is it kind of a combo of different staff, or is it one specific entity?
There's three things going on. 5 of them have auto locks right now, and they lock on their own. Marina Park is done by our contract janitor. That's where they start their work, so once they're done, they lock it. And then the police department is currently locking down 15th Street until we go through the capital improvement project, which will install all the auto locks on that.
And do you think, I know there's a cost difference between auto locks at $450 one time and then $122 annually based on, damages, based on them breaking, based on a whole host of factors. Do you think we could implement everything, as Councilmember Kleiman's saying, in this manner, but maybe look at a hybrid approach to say that some just always need to be manually done versus some that can do auto? I guess who is, as Mr. Mosier did mention, who is checking to make sure people aren't making a home out of it when they do auto lock? I know people can get out once they get in, but nobody can get in. So is that another additional staff resource that we're utilizing to get people out of there or checking to see if people are sleeping in there?
Sure, a couple of ways we could approach that. One, if we decide to go with a security contractor in the interim to make sure we get everything locked down as we convert, that security contractor could give us feedback on what they're seeing at the various restrooms each night. So we would know in the future, even if we auto lock, does this facility have to be manually checked? We also have janitorial services that goes in the middle of the night to all of the restrooms. So they could also report back. They will not clear the restroom. That's not what they're there for, but they would certainly report that and call the police department to come and help them clear that restroom should they find people there.
So I know that's not part of their contract, but could we re-enter in a contract with the janitorial services to provide the locking services so that if they're already there cleaning, can they lock it and then lower the cost of the manually without going to auto if they're already in there cleaning?
We did talk to them about that, and we got a quote from that. The concern is their concern about being put in a situation where their staff is alone in the middle of the night with perhaps strangers in a restroom. They don't want to be involved in the clearing of that facility. So we thought, well, if police is going to have to be involved anyway, staff's idea was just to get a security guard in the meantime until we can implement and have a better idea of what we're dealing with in terms of clearing in the long term.
So they usually clean in hours that they feel safe during the day?
No, they clean during the night, but if there's someone in the restroom, they will report it and leave. They won't finish cleaning that facility.
Just to clarify, they start cleaning at 10 o'clock at night and go through the whole 32 restrooms or 34 restrooms overnight. They don't get done till 7 in the morning. Yeah. So if you want them all locked, they won't be able to lock them because they're working their way around.
Yeah.
You'll need someone to lock them, and they'll unlock them, clean them, and then lock them back up again when they get to it. But it could be 1, 2 in the morning when they get to that restroom.
I mean, and that builds in the same argument. If you were manually doing all of the bathrooms, how are you going to close them all at 11?
So in the long run, we'd expect the auto locks, as we put them in, would all close at the time they need to, and then there'll be some level of backup with our probably janitorial staff finding people in them, calling the police department. In the short run, though, you're going to need someone to basically physically lock them. There's just not the ability right now for us to go out there and lock all these restrooms. And
then just one policy thing that was well before my time. What was the decision for parks to be open or closed from 11 to 6 versus a dusk to dawn policy? Was there a creation to that back in the day that thought this was a better idea, or is there?
Yeah, I'm looking for Sean Levin, our Recreation Senior Services Director. Some of our parks, as you do know, are programmed in the evening with sports teams and other activities, and I'm assuming part of that had to do with the use of the park, but I will let Sean take it from here.
I guess those that don't have lights.
Mayor and Council, that's been in the municipal code as long as I know. I mean, since before I got here, so I don't know when it came about. But that's in the municipal code that parks are open from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, we got tons of emails from folks specifically in Port Street, specifically Irvine Terrace. That was a big part, and there's no lights there. That's a dusk to dawn park, in my opinion, for both of those, the Greenbelt and for that. So that's something maybe to discuss for later in a concept, but I've probably gone on long enough with questions, but I really am sympathetic to this. I know there are people in certain areas that do use the restrooms legitimately, but in residential neighborhoods, it makes total sense to close the restrooms when they need to be. So I support this. I do question the 19th Street need for 2 a.m. I do think that should get changed. I get it that that's where a lot of boating opportunities to use the restroom are. Is that why it's still 2? Do we know, usage? I doubt there's tracking on the usage, but are there other options for people in the harbor than that if we close that earlier?
There may be. We just know that one is one of the primary ones that when you're on the water, and I'd have to speak to the boaters here, that's one of the primary ones they use. And that activity, it goes all night, but I think 2 o'clock is probably the latest we do. You could go earlier on that. There are places maybe they can get in. They tend to go to the restroom over at the ferry dock. You can get off of the Opal Pier and walk over to that. You might be able to get the one by the fire station if you can get in the Grand Canal and get off. But the harbor runs at a different level, and it's interesting because the Harbor Commission over the last year has been talking about adding a restroom, and I don't know where that conversation at, but there's a need out there for night usage.
And the Marina Park restroom that's associated to the building, not the lighthouse, but the building, when does that close?
That would close with the building and the park because that's the one that faces the parking lot that the restaurant uses, so I'm assuming it would close at 10 also with the park and the restaurant.
Could that stay open later and swap that out for 19th Street?
We could look at that. That's an integral restroom. It's not a standalone, and it's in the building, so I don't know how that would work. I'd have to see how that works. But you could leave that open, but that, again, would become a neighborhood restroom because you got residents across the street there.
Yeah, I just think 2 a.m. is a little much, as is our the Balboa Island fire station and location. I don't know how much use is going on there. Our mayor probably knows a lot more down there than I would, but I don't know if he would want to chime in on 2 a.m. as being too late there as well. But the ferry one, sort of makes sense. There's already operators down there by the ferry doing its work. Are they, I should know this, being here my whole life, but when does the ferry close on like non-busy times?
I did remember, it's either 11 or 12 maybe during, it could be around later in the summer.
But in summer it's later, right? I think. But
And the 2 a.m., just so you know, is also, if you look at the Balboa Fire Station, which doesn't have a whole lot of use, but it's in a business district. You have the restaurant right across the street. There's more of an activity expected at night. Same with the pier in some of these areas. So you have the urban restrooms tend to work that way. There's more activity at night than, let's say, a park that closes at 10 o'clock. That's why the suggested times, but those are subject to whatever council wants to do.
Those are really just ones that I kind of picked up that we may want to have a discussion with internally before we make direction, but that's kind of all I had for now.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Stapleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just say that I echo everything that Councilwoman Lauren Kleinman spoke about. I think this is something we need to do effective immediately. I'm in favor of closing every bathroom in the city. There's no reason we're the only one amongst all of the cities in Orange County that don't lock their bathrooms. We were getting a tremendous amount of pressure on 15th Street with that bathroom, with the scenario that was going on there. We've manually locked those for a few weeks now, and I've had nothing but positive comments from everybody in that area, all the residents that live there. Unfortunately, like we heard, it did push out to other parts of the city, so I think that's why we can't phase this in, because they're going to find some of these open bathrooms and continue to move through there. Just for information, I was at a Moonlight Monument tour in Washington, D.C. probably 3 weeks ago, and walking around the monuments after 9 o'clock at night, and every single bathroom in our nation's capital was locked. So, for whatever that's worth. Thank you.
Councilmember Grant.
I'm in accord. We do need to give clear direction to our residents and our visitors that all of our city property, including our beaches, parks, sidewalks, and restrooms, are going to be properly used. And that just doesn't seem to be the case right now. We can't disregard the ongoing misuse and vandalism that's impeding the safe operations of our city. Certainly, we're expending a lot of resources in addressing those problems. I think Councilmember Kleinman mentioned the graffiti. There's vandalism that was mentioned by members of the public. We know that we're spending money to sort of react, and so this is a proactive measure to try and take back this safety that we have been missing in our communities. I do defer to staff to figure out the most efficient pathway to that. It sounds like we're going to have to spend some money in the short run to clear these bathrooms. We can't be putting our janitorial staff or our regular staff in jeopardy and going into these facilities to deal with this. So I do support an interim method of clearing, whether that be a hybrid of maybe some janitorial, some police, and some security. And again, that's the sausage making that we assume that you guys are the best at. But as far as direction goes, I am in support of that. It's a lot of money to spend, but I think it will be offset by the savings that we'll have in bringing these facilities back into good order. I just want to say that I am glad that we're, looking at this now, because it has been a significant concern to our community. We've gotten a lot of comments from the public, and I know that it's a really important piece of our overall strategy in providing safety in our city.
Thank you. Okay, just a couple of quick comments from myself. I really appreciate what you guys did with the versatility in the staff report or in this study session, and giving so many great options and kind of where we can go from here. And I do appreciate coming back and kind of seeing the large influx of people speaking out on this in the community, asking for them to be closed and finding a solution. It might not be the most cost-effective solution, but I think it's a solution nonetheless, and something that I am in support of. So, Councilmember Kleiman?
Yeah, so I'll just reiterate what I said earlier. My proposal is that we have staff return, just as quickly as you can with I don't know if you have to go out for RFP or if you have an existing vendor or contractor in mind, however you see fit, however that makes the most sense. Return with that contract or combination of contracts to lock and unlock our restrooms, all of them, nightly, manually, so that they're cleared and we can ensure everyone's safety from 10 to 6 on a daily basis. I think it's really important for clarity, for consistency. I think this needs to be the policy going forward, and the message, again, once again, needs to be clear that our restrooms are closed, and it's much easier than this one closes at this time and that one closes at that time, and we're closing this one now, but the other one's going to be closed in 6 months from now. So, again, however staff wants to handle it, I defer to you on that, but the sooner you can come back with that most expeditious way, that would be fantastic.
Great. So just to summarize really quickly, it looks like the recommendation from Councilmember Kleiman is we close all bathrooms from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. While staff tries to coordinate how that's possible, we go out for RFP on an interim service to take care of that. Can we take a quick straw poll on that?
That's unanimous.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Next item is a discussion about the library lecture hall. Wonderful. I imagine that is the other half of the room. So, we have a report on this one. Mr. Webb, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Dave Webb, your Public Works Director. With me tonight is Jason Al-Alman. He is our Finance Director, and we're going to present to you tonight the discussion on the library lecture hall. And if I would, when I'm done with my presentation, the foundation board is with us. The president would like to make a presentation. Also, Jill Tucker would like to make a presentation, so I'll have them go right after myself, if that's
Absolutely.
Okay.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Let's jump in. Catches up here. So I'm going to start with a little history because we're not all familiar with this. This project is dated back some years, pardon me if I go a little into depth. We have several new council members who weren't here when we started this project. So here is the location of the proposed lecture hall. It's right in front of the Central Library. We're looking to use a portion of the parking lot along with the existing Greenbelt bioswale along Avocado to locate the potential building. And this next slide kind of gives you a layout of the floor plan, and you can see the existing library there. What they're planning on doing is cutting into the parking lot and building the lecture hall. This took an extensive amount of time to look, and the architect looked at several areas with the committee, and finally came onto this one. But this is a site challenge site, and I'll talk about that later. There's a lot of utilities and other things that drive some of the issues on this project. There you go. So to give you a sense of what this project would look like, here's the artistic rendering of the lecture hall, and you can see the library on the side and the new building there. That would be one view. This would be the back view against Avocado. This is, as you can see, it's kind of mimics this building here, Civic Center. And if you can imagine inside this chamber itself, kind of the same thing. It's an odd-shaped building. It's not square. It's got stadium seating involved in it. This is high-end glass and steel with high-end fixtures in it to kind of mimic this project. As for the slowness. This would be the interior looking at it as it's currently designed with the seating looking down at the stage. So then maybe just a little more here on history so we can understand how we got here. So back in 1819, the project started. The foundation proposed with the city to do a project for a new lecture hall, and we put in $70,000 to kind of initiate an exploratory effort. When we got to March of 19, during our CIP early look, there was a discussion involved, and the council decided to put $500,000 into the 1920 CIP to start the conceptual development of the project and cost estimates. So then in July of 19, the city set up a 5-member library lecture hall design committee, which it's called, and had former council member Dixon as part of that committee to go through the design and kind of guide the project. Then in November of 19, the lecture hall design committee recommended to the city council the design architect for the project. They went through and reviewed those and picked Bob Coffey and Associates and his team. And they also kind of came up with a total overall project cost identified at $8 million at that time, and a 50-50 split with about a 7,000 square building and 275 seats at the time. Now again, I'm saying the dates here because it's important. This was going to be basically completed in 2022. So then we had our pandemic hit. Excuse my slides here. Push that for me. There it is. So as you all recall, in February 2020, we had our COVID-19 pandemic, and this was a big paradigm shift in this whole process, and we're still feeling ramifications of that today. It did delay the project. It cost all kinds of additional cost on it. So in September of 21, we came back with a study session, and the council reviewed the tentative and approved the recommendations of the design committee to do a concept design, and at that time the total project cost was about $12,775,000, and they still proposed a 50-50 split, and the council deliberated this and basically had a $13 million agreement with them. On November of that year, the council approved a 9,500. This is the finalization of the concept, and it turned out to be about 9,500 square feet on the concept, with a total project estimate at that time of $12.8 million. And the CIP was set at $13 million with a 50-50 split of $6.5 million, one for the city, one for the foundation. And they gave staff instructions to go on and continue with the project. So with that, we got into February of 23. As you recall, we went out and we completed the design of the project and went out to bid on the project. And the bids came in at $17.1 million on the project over the estimate, about 22% higher than the new estimate of $14 million. So in March of this year, the council rejected those bids and asked staff to try again and go out in September of this year, which brings us up to the current status of today. So our current status on this project is basically, we have a MOU in place with the Library Foundation currently, going on a 50-50 split up to $13 million. That'd be $5.6 million each, as I mentioned. The final plans have been completed. Building permits were issued. The building right now stands at 9,814 square feet with 299 seats, and the estimate for the building when it went out was $18.5 million. And I put a note here that the city cost to date, we put architectural time, we fronted the money for various services, is about $758,000 plus staff time involved in that. So in October of this month, we received 3 bids on when we re-advertised and bid it. And the low bid, again, was with AMG Associates, but the low bid price was $19,668,000. There's a couple alternative bid items there that we probably wouldn't take to deduct out the $9,000 for insurance or add a high-end sound system on top of what we already have for another $409,000. So at the bottom here, I put out the total projected cost. It's tracking right now. The project's tracked at about $23,438,000. And I also put it down because oftentimes on these projects and in our FFP, we talk about cost per square foot. And that's to kind of tell you where the building is in relative, because all buildings are different and they kind of move around. So this one's tracking right now at $2,388 per square foot. And that is rather high, but I'll try to explain that. I was asked to kind of give some reference to that number because I know it's just, these are large numbers and you're trying to put a kind of a peg on where it's at. But some background reference on that number. Back in 2018, we awarded a contract for Fire Station 5, and that all-in cost when it was done was $779,000. Back in November 2020, the council awarded a contract for Station 2, the Lido Station, and when we got done with that project, the all-in cost was $755. Currently, we have the junior lifeguard building going. We awarded that contract in August of 22, and it's a smaller building, so the number's a little higher. It's only 5,000 square feet, but it's currently tracking at $1,434 per square foot. So you can kind of look at that and then reference this. This is a high-end building, and there's some reasons for that. This site is constrained. It's got some utilities that have to be dealt with. There's a large storm drain and other things that run through the property that have to be relocated to build this building. This is a high-end building. It's glass steel, high-end fixtures like the Civic Center, so it adds to the cost. You're also we're coming out of COVID still. We still have supply constraints and tight labor markets. We've talked to some of our builders out there, and they're telling us they have 2 years of backlog. So there's a lot of work out there, which drives the cost. And also, if you recall, the federal government's just dumped a bunch of money into between the Inflation Act and the other acts they put in. There's a lot of competing money out there for contractors, and of course that drives prices up. So all those go into kind of tell you why this is high. I did a self-check after staff checked on the number with the various contractors. I called our contractor KPRS who built Marina Park and also Oasis. He did me a favor and looked at it, and he said basically that's kind of the right number for this project in this environment. It's expensive, but that's where it's at. So I want to make sure you understand those numbers before we go forward. This next slide just kind of shows the breakdown of it, and we track these. If you look on that first column, this was back in November 21 when we were talking where we thought we were on the project. And then again, this is through the other side of COVID. Now we're here in October 23, and you notice it went from 12.8 to 32.4 million on the total cost. And again, the budget right now approved by the council is 13 million. And then just if you decide to move forward on this building, you need to recognize there's other operating costs. I put on here janitorial costs. We took an estimate of that, about $30,000. There's always an annual maintenance repair of all buildings. They degrade over time. Things need to be replaced, lighting systems, sound systems. And that tends to run about 1.5% of the cost. In this case, about $315,000 you can expect to spend on an average over the life of the building plus CIP. Annual utilities come into a building. Again, this is all variable depending on the use of the building. This is the $56,000 here is based on a lower use. I think that was thought that the lecture hall is going to be used by the foundation. I think they said 43 or 45 times a year, and there'll be some other programming. And I don't think it's all been identified yet, but right now we're looking at lower. Should it be programmed at a higher use, you can expect the utilities to go up. And additionally, you have staffing needs that I don't think we've determined on that based on the use. There are other things that go into buildings like building insurance. We're self-insured, things like that are not on here, but I didn't have costs for those. But this time, I wanted to kind of just go a little bit on the library foundation. And I will say, both the foundation, they're going to be making a discussion after this presentation to give you some more. But we did meet with them recently. We have a current MOU. The MOU requires them to put $6.5 million in an escrow account prior to the award. And that's part of the reason for this discussion today, because should you choose to go forward with the award, we need to give written notice to the foundation to get the money forward so that you can actually award the project. You want to have the money in the account to fund the contract if we go that route. We had a meeting with them on October 25th and talked through that, and the good news is the foundation advised staff that they have 8.2 in hard commitments right now available. That's above the 6.5, which is good news. $7 million of that, it can be placed in an escrow account upon written notice as per the agreement. And they have another $1.2 million that they can collect over the next 3 years that'll contribute to that. They also identified that they had another about $1 million in soft money. This is pledges that people are saying it, but it's not under written contract or anything. So if they were able to collect all that money and everybody went through on their contract, they'd have about $9.2 million they could bring to the table on the project. That last slide there I changed. It's different from your packet because when we talked, I thought they maybe I misheard them. They said they committed to working more, but I was clarified by the foundation. They didn't have a written commitment at the time. They couldn't make the statement they're going to commit to do additional fundraising up to the 50-50 mark. I think they have more information on that tonight, so I changed that. Just basically, they have an interest in obviously pursuing further fundraising on this project, but I can't hold them to any kind of commitment that we have. We only have the MOU, which is currently 6.5 to the foundation. So at this point, I want to take a moment and turn over to Jason. He wants to talk a little bit about the funding shortfall, if I could pass the one.
So this slide contemplates the foundation funding 50%. So if the city commits to funding the other 50% of the total project costs, an appropriation of $5.2 million would be required to increase the city's funding commitment from $6.5 million to $11.7 million. The city currently has $29 million in capital reserve funding. These funds are largely intended to be used for projects that are outlined in the city's facilities financial plan, harbor and beaches master plan, and capital improvement program. We have about $20 million in projects that are expected to be funded from these capital reserves over the next few years on projects like the Balboa Island Drainage Project and the Balboa Library and Fire Station Project. Nonetheless, FFP reserves or capital reserves could be used to fund the shortfall for the library lecture hall. I did want to point out, though, that we do have significant projects that are anticipated to be constructed over the next 10 plus years, which includes 2 piers and seawall projects. The use of general fund surpluses is one of the ways that we expect to provide funding to address the city's long-term capital needs. Additionally, as the city pays down its long-term liabilities, namely the city's pension liability, operating funds may be reallocated to support the city's long-term capital needs. So the Library Foundation, if they commit to paying 50% of total project costs, or $11.7 million, with $7 million to be placed in escrow prior to contract award, and $4.7 million to be funded from donations over the next 3 years, depending on the timing of those donations and construction, the city would temporarily need to allocate up to $4.7 million for the portion of the project to be repaid by the foundation over the next few years. And that would be in addition to the city's required contribution.
Jason, can you go back 2 slides? Go forward 1 slide. On this one, when we're talking about the city's, the $29 million, so the $29 million in capital reserves currently anticipates 6.5. So if we had the additional 5.2 plus the 4.7 on the one you just on the next slide after, that's about 10 million. So it would drop the 29 down 19, which is below the 20 million that we know we need for the next few years of capital projects. Am I doing the math right on that?
You are, although I will say this, that we've looked at projects that have not yet been appropriated, so we've just identified potential funding needs, and so we could address those other funding shortages in the future.
Which would, I mean, normally under that, you either scale back or you move back.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So then the basically where we're going tonight, we're looking for council's direction, discussion on, and probably a straw vote on a direction here. Understand the project has changed through the pandemic from the original thought on this. It's gotten a little bigger. It's gotten a little much more expensive due to the nature of where we stand today. But we are at a point, we have bids. We need to make a determination where you'd like to go. So at this point, we need to decide whether you want to accept the bids or not. And again, I say that only because we need to move money around and then bring it back to you for accepting the bids and awarding of the contract. If you decide you want to move forward and accept the bids, then we're going to need some direction so we can work with the foundation on the MOU on how you want to fund it. Right now, again, we're $13 million, 6.5 each into it. And if that's the case and you establish the funding, we can bring back an MOU that with the foundation's agreement on that to adjust that. And then lastly, we'd award the contract. So with that, I'm going to kind of turn it over, if it's okay, to the foundation. Those are our next steps we need from you, but they like to have the presentation of the foundation. So I'm going to ask Kevin Barlow to come up. He's the president of the Newport Beach Library Foundation, and here's your clicker.
Thank you, Dave, for presenting all that and putting it all together for us. As Dave mentioned, my name is Kevin Barlow. I'm the chair of the Newport Beach Public Library Foundation. I'm also a business owner here in Newport Beach, so just want to take a minute to thank the council for all you do to make it a business-friendly environment and a great place to reside. I've been a member of the board since 2016, so I'll be speaking on behalf of the foundation, which is the library's fundraising partner in this project. It is not a foundation project, it's a library project the foundation is fundraising for. Very quickly, because this will come up later in the presentation, the Newport Public Beach Library Foundation's mission statement is the Newport Beach Library Foundation provides essential funding that keeps the Newport Beach Library vital, innovative by enabling and inspiring lifelong learning, advancing knowledge, and strengthening the community. We're very proud of the fact that we have a 34-year-long public nonprofit partnership with the city and the library. The foundation was established in 1989, and the beautiful central library we have down here was funded in a public nonprofit partnership similar to what is being proposed here. The foundation raised $2.2 million from the private sector for the construction of the central library out of a total cost of $8.2 million. So that number is about 25% of the library was funded by donations. That partnership has led to the beautiful library building, as well as being named the only star library here in Orange County. Over the past 10 years, the foundation has granted $2 million for capital improvements and advanced technology to the library, as well as $5 million in programming for the community. The foundation exists to provide programming to the community and fundraisers to do that. Examples of that are the Witty Lecture Series, Library Live, Medicine in Your Backyard, Spotlight on Science, Financial Literacy Work Group, and the Book Discussion Group. In 2015, it was the Board of Trustees that proposed the library have a state-of-the-art facility to house the growing list of programs and support the community's expressed desire for increased educational and cultural programming. And the Library Foundation at that time accepted the responsibility of facilitating the philanthropic support for the library lecture hall. It's a very analogous situation to what happened with the construction of the Central Library in 1994. This is a perfect mission fit for the Library Foundation, as you can see from the mission that we read before, as it is supporting a library building. So the MOU that Dave mentioned here just expresses an agreed upon need that has been signed and reaffirmed twice over the past few years. Signed by the city and the Newport Beach Public Library Foundation, and I'll read here. There's a need for a modern facility at the Central Library, the Library Lecture Hall, to accommodate foundation programs, as well as other library, cultural, educational, entertainment, civic, and community-focused events to serve the Newport Beach residents and facilitate other city gatherings, including those of city employees and purposes. And that has been agreed to by both the city and the foundation. The foundation's funding responsibility, as Dave mentioned, is very clearly outlined here in section 2.1. The foundation commitment was the foundation expressly agrees it uses its best efforts to collect donations in the amount of 50% of the estimated project cost, or $6,500,000, whichever is less, to pay toward costs of the project. The donor expectations were that donors were provided information about the Beyond Books campaign, and they've donated funds and signed irrevocable gift agreements based on a specific understanding of the project, and that's articulated in the Beyond Books campaign and the memos of understanding between the foundation and the city. If there is a failure to accept current bids or there are material changes to the scope of the project, it will require renegotiations of the contracts with our donors, and there's a significant risk of losing key committed donors if we have to go back to them after the bids have been rejected. The good news here is that the city will have full operational control of the building, and within the terms provided by the Memo of Understanding, the priority of use, that is subject to the priority of use policies in Exhibit B of the Memo of Understanding, which says the foundation and the library will maintain the preference A1 and A2 for use of the facility for the foundation's support in fundraising. Due to the generous support of private donors and the hard work of the fundraising team, the City of Newport Beach and its residents will be the sole owners of the world-class facility at a discounted cost of 50% of the project costs. We understand that an auditorium like this is not cheap on an absolute basis, and it's not cheap on a price per square foot basis, but it is a high-end, world-class building that fits with the other buildings in Newport Beach. Due to the private citizen support, the library lecture hall will be accretive to the city's financial position, as they will receive a building that has cost over $22 million to build for only $11 million in financial support. The good news, so I have two pieces of good news here and one ask. The good news is, as of today, as you can see in Dave's report, the foundation has met and exceeded its agreed upon commitment by over 15%. And the second is that last night the foundation board voted to approve leadership to negotiate an updated MOU by increasing the foundation commitment section 2.1 for the library lecture hall as proposed to reflect new numbers of 50% of the new expected project cost, or $11,719,000. So we've upped our commitment in the last 24 hours by $5.2 million. With that, I'll turn it over to Jill Johnson-Tucker, who's going to speak on behalf of the fundraising team.
Good afternoon, Mayor Blum and members of the council. I'm Jill Johnson-Tucker, and I'm here both as the chair of the Beyond Books Capital Campaign, raising funds for Woody Hall, and also as the chair of the Library Lecture Hall Design Committee. As Dave Webb mentioned, this project was embraced by the City Council in 2019, but it started long before that for library supporters. As early as 2014, the site was studied, meetings were held with the architects of this City Hall. Then in 2015, the Board of Library Trustees appointed a subcommittee to study the lot and determine where on the lot the facility would best fit. Since that time, dozens of volunteers, committee members, and city council members have enthusiastically embraced the dream of a lecture hall on the Civic Center grounds, essentially not really a lecture hall, but a community auditorium. This has been a long journey, and the outcome depends on you. For those of you who have not been following this journey, a bit of background. Programming is a growth area in libraries nationwide. While the pandemic interrupted our calculations, back in 2019, our library programming had increased 160% over the previous 10 years. Now, so soon after we are back to in-person meetings, and after a couple of years of Zoom presentations during the pandemic, the growth in our library programming has soared. We've introduced several new series, and we have sellout crowds routinely. The Library Live Lecture with columnist Steve Lopez sold out last Thursday with 180 in attendance and 100 on the wait list. The Spotlight on Science lecture on artificial intelligence with the UCI professor tomorrow, hope you all might try to make it, is also sold out, but we'll find a spot for you. Author Lisa C. had hundreds of people on the wait list for her sold-out presentation a couple of weeks ago. The Sunday Musicale this past weekend was a sellout. It is just a matter of course that there is not enough capacity. If you're fortunate enough to get a seat, then you must grapple with the subpar audiovisual system. And the biggest issue is poor sight lines. Whoops, I'm going to go back. It is a challenge to see the speaker, and if the presentation involves a slideshow, it's not possible to see the screen for much of the audience. And yet people continue to show up. They'll sit packed in, cheek to jowl, in stackable chairs, in less than ideal conditions because they want to learn and be entertained and be part of a community. Dave mentioned the 48 times, I think, that the various library groups would use Woody Hall. That's just current use and just by the foundation. There are programs in development and programs that interested donors would like to sponsor. Members of our community flock to the weekend-long writers' conferences in Sun Valley and in Rancho Mirage, both of which sell out a year in advance. And I personally like to see that here as well. We'd like to see a series with think tank speakers and have a sponsor in line for that. We've discussed a film series with local movie makers like Greg McGilvray. The possibilities are endless if we have the right space. And what about the needs of the greater community? Of course, we expect the Chamber of Commerce and Speak Up Newport will want to use Woody Hall, but we've heard from Crystal Cove Conservancy, who is at this moment hosting a sold-out lecture there on the beach, just one in their popular sold-out series. Our facility could suit groups like the Decorative Arts Society, which I belong to, that holds 6 or 8 lectures a year with world-class designers and who currently use Big Newport Movie Theater. Not to mention businesses in the area who may want to host seminars and training sessions. We don't know who all is out there, but we know that there's a lot of demand. There just is no facility within Newport Beach that could host these groups. These outside users would pay to use Woody Hall, as they do for other city facilities. Those fees would offset the expenses of maintenance. The city charges commercial users an hourly fee of $421 for residences and $773 for non-residences to use Marina Park. Or to compare a similar size facility, Bowers Museum in Santa Ana, which has an auditorium that seats 292, charges a base fee of $1,800 to $2,250 to use our auditorium. I would venture to guess that our fees would be quite a bit higher. So here we are. It's been a 10-year journey, and we're at the end of the line. It's up to you to determine the outcome for all of the council members, all of the committee members, all the donors, everyone who's put in years of time or pledged millions of dollars. And you will determine the outcome for all the future users. If it doesn't happen now, will it happen down the road? Will you convince the foundation to fundraise at a later date, having refused their money now? Will other groups want to participate in other public-private partnerships with the city if this project fails? Like you, we were disappointed when the bids came in higher than expected, but what hasn't? We fulfilled the terms of the public-private partnership, raising our $6.5 million, and then doing that one better by raising well over $8 million to date, with another $1,250,000 in negotiation. And we voted last night, as you heard from Kevin, to match 50% of the low bid. Will you accept the foundation's nearly $12 million in order to build a facility that many other library systems already enjoy? We all certainly hope so, and we can't wait for the day at the grand opening when we're celebrating this long overdue facility that will complete an unparalleled city campus in our beloved Newport Beach. Thank you for all you do. My husband, Larry Tucker, would like to say a few words as well.
Good afternoon. I'd like to just mention a couple of things about the pledges that came along to date. When we got the bids back in late February, the fundraising stopped. By then, they'd already raised $7 million cash, another 1.2 in pledges that are little by little, as time goes by, they're being honored and the money's been put up. So at the point in time when they actually have a project, then it's easy to go out and start fundraising. It's not easy to go out and start asking people to spend their time, and you spend your time when you don't even know that there's a project. As far as the cash flow is concerned, the city would put up, the foundation would put up the $7 million at the front end. That's the first $7 million that will get spent. And because of all the underground work that has to happen to relocate the utilities that Dave referred to, it's going to take a while before the real big money starts getting spent to actually build the building. So let's talk about the money a little bit further. So the commitment's $6.5 million. The real number needs to be $11.7 million. And those types of things happen when a project is complex. It takes 2 to 3 years to get through the plan check, and bidding process. And costs have more or less doubled. I mean, look at the Junior Guard facility. That's kind of a perfect example. It's just happened. These are big numbers. But the two key questions, I think, for the City Council is getting a $24 or $23.5 million facility for half price a worthy bargain, and can the city afford a $12 million or $11.5 million expenditure for a community auditorium? The city's own long-range fiscal forecast for ending in 2042 shows increasing surpluses which exceed $50 million in each year starting in 2030. And that does not count property tax revenues that should be generated by new housing that can be expected as a result of the state's housing element mandate, net of costs related to providing services to new residents. Nor does that city forecast include increased interest earnings from the city's impressive short-term reserve portfolio, which is a little less than $400 million. $400 million of reserves for a city of our size, rather staggering. For those of us who are skeptical of the reliability of long-term fiscal forecast, and I count myself in that camp, even if the city's fiscal forecasts were off by 50%, the city would still be in an extraordinary fiscal shape. The city's operating surplus for the fiscal year that just ended June 30 of 2023 is $20 million. The fiscal year 2024 general fund revenue budget is nearly $305 million. So that's kind of the current goings-on with the city's budget. There's one other factor that should be considered in evaluating the financial wherewithal of a city, and that is that the city every year pays on the mortgage on the city hall $8.5 million for debt service. That $8.5 million is in the budget every year. You don't notice it. The surplus that I just referred to happens notwithstanding that $8.5 million being spent. The debt is fully amortizing and will be paid off in 18 years. Now that may seem like a long time from now, but some of the higher cost infrastructure assets that the city plans to replace are scheduled to be replaced a long time from now. I might note that a few of the big expenditures are shown on the city's FFP and the Harbor and Beaches Master Plan as being scheduled to start construction in a few years. The Harbor and Beach Master Plan shows the Balboa Island seawalls, at least the latest copy I've seen, replaced over a couple of years, starting in 2027, 2028. Jason mentioned that it was more like a 10-year plan. Those walls are not going to be replaced in the short term. They are going to need to be replaced, but that's a placeholder. That's what the staff does, is they list all of the things that will need to get replaced. They even have the replacement of City Hall in like 2070. Some of you may even be around for that, but perhaps not. But I digress. The city has and expected to continue to have large surpluses even with those $8.5 million per year debt payments effectively embedded in each year's budget, not to mention the $45 million per year paid towards unfunded pension liabilities, which we still have a surplus in spite of that. So if the city believes it needs money in the future for infrastructure replacements, once the city hall debt is paid off, or earlier if refinanced, the city in effect would have an additional $8.5 million available yearly to pay for infrastructure improvements, or it would have the capacity to borrow a sum that could be debt serviced by $8.5 million that the city is already paying every year. Should the city choose the city should be able to borrow around $90 million on a 15-year fully amortized loan with interest at 5%. If it were to refinance the city hall debt before it's fully amortized, it would be able to debt service $90 million less the amount financed. While 5% is an interest rate lower than today's market rate, the interest paid on municipal bonds the city could issue would be income tax free, so the interest rate on that debt would be less than the market interest rate of taxable debt instruments, especially since the city has AAA credit. I would also like to comment on the want and need discussion that I expect will come up shortly. It's entirely rational to prioritize spending of limited resources based upon whether an expenditure is for a want or for a need, with one exception. If a buyer can afford to buy an asset, then that changes the calculus because the asset can be bought regardless of whether it is a want or a need. And that calculus might change even further if someone else is willing to pay half the cost of that asset. A recent example of an asset that the city could afford, thereby bypassing the want versus need analysis, is the Junior Guards building. There's no doubt that this is a great project, yet the Junior Guards program has operated from humble headquarters for about 50 years. I know since my kids were Junior Guards for several years. I have not heard of any risks to kids from being at the historically modest Junior Guards facility, so the new Junior Guards facility I submit is not technically a need. But the Junior Guard Foundation raised the money for an asset it wanted, even though the Junior Guards program will only use the facility 7 weeks a year. And the city picked up the balance of the cost for a facility it will control the use of most of the year. While Woody Hall is certainly a larger scope project, the fact pattern is similar. There are plenty of other facilities that the city owns that were not technically needs, like going into the senior services business with Oasis or building a large bayfront park with meeting and community rooms and docks. But these were highly desirable quality of life assets, and the city could afford those assets and the related programming. It could even afford the $140 million City Hall as its structural operating surplus proves. We have a surplus every year. I was on the Finance Committee for 6.5 years. We always have a surplus. However, even if some of these projects weren't needs, they were great ideas and great investments for the community. Our City Council has historically spent money on quality of life assets, and that is what has helped keep Newport, Newport. Bottom line, the want or need approach to capital spending only has to apply when you don't have the money to buy the asset you have in mind, because of other more important demands on your resources. In this case, the city has enough money to come up with its $11.7 million towards a $23.5 million community auditorium without sacrificing anything else. And no one should accuse the city council members of a profligate expenditure of $12 million or thereabouts, when there are plenty of homes in Newport Beach that you would not be able to buy today if all you had available to spend was a mere $12 million. I'm just about done, Noah. I hope the foundation has offered enough reasons for all the council, or at least 4 of you, to choose to accept the foundation's exceptionally generous offer, award the contract for Woody Hall to the low bidder, and proceed with construction. I hope that in making this decision, you focus on the long run, as cities are forever. If the foundation's unprecedented offer is turned down, I fear our beloved Newport Beach may never have a community auditorium, because it will cost too much money for the city alone to pay for a community auditorium. Thank you for being patient with me.
Thank you. All right. Let's go ahead and move it up here real quick. Mayor Pro Tem.
Larry was speaking my love language about talking about finances, so let's go ahead and do that for a little bit. So there are a couple of us who are on the dais right now who have been on the dais throughout this entire discussion. So I was there when we were talking about $8 million, which is actually more than the junior guard cost in total, just an FYI. And that first go around, and there wasn't, I don't remember there being unanimous support, but there was at least enough support to move forward. When it came back to us at 13, we had a number of people in the community who came to us and said, see, we told you it would go up. Because folks might forget that there was a pretty aggressive campaign launched against this at the beginning of this, telling us that it was the costs were going to run out of control, that it was going to eventually get to the point where it would be almost embarrassing how expensive it would be. And I told them that wouldn't happen. And when it got to 13, I stood tall on that one and said, all right, we can find a way to make this one work. Part of the reason that this one was problematic at the beginning, at that time as well, we had a lot of conversations with people who were asking for a community center on the west side of Newport Beach. We've repeatedly told them no, because it would cost over $20 million, and that was too expensive. And we've had that discussion, frankly, since the moment we got on council. Councilmember Avery and I did. And so when we get in and we're looking now at trying to work through either the MOU or the cost on this, one of the things we're looking at is just the half that we're talking about, the mere $12 million that Larry referenced. That's actually 3 times our original commitment that we made. It's almost double the original commitment that we made. But the problem is, as we were talking about earlier, it's actually not $12 million that the city would be committing to, because we can't guarantee that the additional $5 million would come in. We're actually talking about the city committing to $17 million. And the reason we know that is because even if we entered into the MOU and agreed to it 12 and 12, first off, I think that we all should and would expect that there'd be cost overruns, change orders, et cetera, especially once we get underneath the ground and find out what's there. But assume for a moment that that's what it is. There's no real ability for us to enforce the $5 million commitment against the foundation. There's no scenario where the city of Newport Beach would sue for breach of contract on that. And so I think that when we're up here and we're trying to decide what we're going to do, we have to assume that it's 17. And so when we're looking at that, you're really saying like the city is committing right up front to 4 times the amount that we had committed to when this project first started down the pike. And if at that time we had been told it wasn't a planned $8 million, it was a planned $24 million, there would have been 0 votes to move forward at that point. So when we're here at this level of money, we've really got to be taking a look at the fact that this is a 299 person facility. At any given time, 0.3% of the people who live in Newport Beach could even enter the building. And that is a problem because without at least doing a city survey of resident desire for now what is going to be projected to be the most expensive building we've ever built in the history of the city on a square footage basis, it's important for us to at least know that a majority of people would rather do this than other things. And we haven't really done that because it wasn't anticipated to be a project this large. I would also point out that at no point have we ever talked about trying to scale the project back. You know, once we got the first bid 9 months ago, there was the opportunity to try to scale it back before going back out for bid. That didn't happen. I understand why it didn't happen, but because it didn't, it came back at, we're still looking at 24 million. What Dave was referencing with the square footage cost is really important because, you know, you look at the most recent fire station, which is a really nice fire station, and there are a lot of really specific requirements that go along with a fire station. That was still $755 a square foot compared to almost $2,400 a square foot for this building. This building would be 3 times a really, really nice fire station. And that's going to be, if we're talking the need to have, nice to have context, that is a need to have project that is 1/3 the cost of a nice to have project. And that is a problem. I'd also point out one of the questions that I was just asking, which if we're looking at it from the discussion on the staff report, when we're talking about the capital reserves of $29 million, we're talking about dipping down below what we know we need for the next several years on that $20 million from the reserves, which means we'd either be pushing back projects that we anticipate needing to do, or we'd be scaling those back in order to do this one. I do not think that for a second we would be interested in pushing back or scaling back the Balboa Island drainage system or the Balboa Library and Fire Station or the other ones on the facilities financing plan. I would recommend folks have an opportunity, if you can, go to the facilities financing plan that actually does go out to 2070. There's not a single building that we're proposing right now on there, or at least anticipating, that has a square footage cost above $1,000 a square foot. Perhaps we're wrong on that, but if we're wrong on that, that means we actually need to be setting aside more money into the capital reserves, not less. So the capital costs on this are deeply concerning when we're looking at this, because it's not just this building we're trying to figure out. Our job is to look at every building. Our job is to look at every facility. Our job is to look at what can we do with the general fund money that can be used for anything legal. And one of the things that we do every year with that surplus that Mr. Tucker was referencing is we go ahead and do, half of it goes toward our long-term liabilities and the other half goes toward neighborhood enhancement projects. We've done dozens and dozens of projects around this city in the last 5 years using that neighborhood enhancement funding. If we moved forward with this, at least for the next 3 years, if not longer, I would anticipate we'd have to put every dime of that neighborhood enhancement funding toward this project, meaning dozens of projects are not going to get funded because we would move forward with this, let alone needing to move back the capital improvement funding. Anything I'm saying, Jason, that you disagree with? No. So this is the challenge when you get up to a project that started at 8 is now at 24, and the city's looking at committing like a hard commitment to at least 4 times the amount that it originally looked at. And so when we move through this, it's important to understand this is not an easy ask. It's actually an enormous ask. and it's one that we need to look at within the context of everything else. Last I'll note is on the MOU, since we're talking about the MOU. One of the discussions that we had during all of the negotiations was whether there'd be any kind of commitment to a surcharge on tickets to help offset the expense of the facility. If at the end of the evening we find out that the council would like to move forward with this, I would like to revisit that as an issue, because what we heard tonight is we've got a minimum of $420,000 a year in facilities maintenance costs on this, plus whatever staff time we're going to devote to this as well, which will probably not be insignificant. If we did that and we were looking at just an average of 40 events with basically almost a sellout show. So if we're at 250 people over 40 events, we're talking 10,000 seats. That's it's $41, $42 per ticket that the city of Newport Beach would essentially subsidize in maintenance costs. And so that's something we've got to talk about. If we're going to be moving forward, we've got to talk about whether tickets need to have a subsidy on it. Again, if we're moving forward on this, there's got to be some way to recover that $5 million extra that if it's not coming in. And I struggle to see a little bit how it would be easy to go out and say, the city's already committed to this contractually, but would you please help the city offset the $5 million? I don't know that that's going to be an easy pitch either. And so I don't know how exactly we have leverage to recover the extra $5. So I wanted to at least lay out the thoughts, because you deserve it, because there have been a lot of people on this that have worked really, really hard. And I appreciate all of the work that you've done. I appreciate the commitments that people have made. At the end of the day, the goal is to find a path forward that is for the best interest of the whole city. I know that a lot of you believe that this is in the best interest of the city, even at this price tag. So where we diverge on that, fortunately, is not what I would consider a core principle. The city is still going to have really strong public safety at the end of the day on this. We're still going to be moving forward in a really good direction. I just struggle to get to the point where I could support this. Thank you.
Councilmember Stapleton.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to begin by recognizing the importance of a project like this. I want to see this project happen, and I'm very appreciative of the public-private partnership that we're discussing tonight. So I want to begin by thanking the residents, the donors, staff, for all your time, money, commitment to a project of this caliber. I especially want to thank Jill and Larry Tucker for your dedicated service to this project since 2014, and certainly the Library Foundation and Kevin and your team. I am extremely sympathetic to all the hours and time and commitment that you guys have put into this project. This is my first year on council. I don't have the luxury of being involved in this since day one. That being said, this is not a discussion I take lightly. No doubt the scope of this project has gone from $8 million to $24 million potentially. Because of this, I believe we need to reimagine the original intent, the original use of this building. Expand the potential for community uses, more of like we talked about tonight of a civic auditorium. There's no doubt the library would remain in the top spot, the host of the building, because you and your foundation have raised all of the funds to date. Councilman Avery and myself, we toured the Newport Beach Community Theater on Cliff Drive a week ago, last night. It's adjacent to John Wayne Park. If you look in our FFP, it is set as an 8,000 square foot building that we purchased back in the 70s as a community theater. It sits in arguably one of the most beautiful parts of our city, overlooking our harbors and beaches, and there is not one window facing that beauty. There's a parking lot next to the building. Starting in 6 years from now, we're discussing, and in the FFP it shows us going to design a new $10 million building potentially on that location. So to take roughly $10 million for that project, $24 million for this project, I'm not saying to punt the project for the library 10 years. I'm saying, is there a world where we can marry these projects together? One's a 90-person auditorium. One's almost a 300-person auditorium. We've had a lot of discussions in this past week. I know Michelle Benedetti's here tonight. She's the president of the theater. the current design of the lecture hall does not work for a community theater. There is just not enough space back of the house to marry these projects together, unfortunately. I wish I was involved a long time ago to help try to get this done, but that wasn't the case. I believe Newport Beach would be very well suited to have a cultural arts center here at our Civic Center. We have a sculpture garden. We could have a world-class lecture hall with a world-class performing arts community theater. I believe expanding the interest to the community would also help with fundraising. It would free up some of this land on Cliff Drive, removing the playhouse and moving it here in conjunction with the lecture hall. I don't feel it is in our best interest as a community to build 2 auditoriums in the city within a certain period of time. My hope is that the current donors, being that the art lovers, the theater lovers, the library lovers, all have something in conjunction, and I hope they would continue to support this project. We would figure out a way to make these two come together. And speaking with staff, with the architecture, this isn't the first time this has been done. There are plenty of examples of community theaters with a lecture hall. So I do believe if there's a will, there is a way. Thank you.
Councilmember Avery.
Yeah, I've been a fan of this project for a long time, and but also very aware over this period of time, and certainly in the last few years, just this period of runaway building costs, and that's what's, of course, really driven it to this number, and that's something nobody could have predicted when this whole project started. And it started with a lot of goodwill, an extraordinary effort, a fundraising effort that another, tranche of dollars pledged just within the last couple of days. So, the thing I think about, I just marvel at this town. It is an engine. It is just unbelievable. The efforts of residents and businesses really have driven the success of this town. And the council is just trying to pave the way and stay out of the way for that to happen. And it's been extraordinary. And we look around at the level of building that's going on right now, despite this huge cost for all these homes that are being built along the waterfront in our communities. My street alone is 3 new houses in the last year and a half. So the question is, are we bullish on Newport Beach? That's really, to me, what it is. And do we want to be, well, we are, do we want to continue to be exceptional? But also, I'm very concerned about if we did go this direction, if the council ultimately went this direction, we'd certainly want the facility, the Woody Lecture Hall, to be, when it opens its doors, it's full all the time. It's just heavily programmed and serving as many people as possible. It's not a huge theater space, 300 people, but it needs to get in as many residents as possible to make it, in my view, worth it with really good programming. And there's evidence, of course, that that's what's been occurring in the library Friends Room. So I don't want to vote no on this. Mr. O'Neill's comments notwithstanding, he's absolutely right on a lot of these points. But do we take the risk to build something exceptional? Are we bullish on Newport Beach? That's the question. But my only hesitation really is not so much the finances. That's Will's department. But I'm concerned about the horsepower to keep that facility filled all the time, whether it's the Newport Harbor Theater Arts program or other programs that are coming out of the library. That we have a robust programming. It would just be, I don't think it should ever be empty every day of the week till we get exhausted. So that's what where I'm coming from, and it's just 2 things. I wish we had more time to delve into this in terms of the programming, getting some assurances that we're really going to have a building that's constantly filled and programming that's superb. And as we go further on, and we see the building, if it takes shape, I think it'll be extraordinary. It's a very expensive thing to do, but it's no one's, and it's, we can't, just like the homes we see going up, we can't do a regular building in this town. We owe it to the legacy of the people of this town who have done extraordinary things with their businesses and their homes to match it. And so that's the way I see this. And there's always a little risk here in terms of the financial side of it. But what we've seen consistently is Newport Beach has done very well in terms of income to the city from all the revenue streams that most of you are aware of. So I'd love some cold comfort that we would be seeing this programming and that there are things in the works. That's where I'm at. And I marvel, I congratulate the Tuckers and all of the people that are involved from the library and all the fundraising that went on. There's no other city could do this of our size. You know, I've been to a few cities our size, and it's a whole nother world. So I just see this as another extraordinary step forward, but I remain concerned about building's use and the programming. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Kleiman.
Thank you. I'll try not to repeat some of the things that were said, other than I do want to express yet again the tremendous effort and the appreciation that I have, that I know we all have, for the time and passion that's been put into developing this project and raising funds to support it. It's certainly a beautifully designed facility, and I am also supportive of the idea of having an auditorium for various uses. Unfortunately, circumstances have changed substantially since the origination of this discussion, which of course predates my time here on council. And I have concerns, as it sounds like several of us do. The first and foremost being the exorbitant estimate to build the project, and then of course the ongoing cost to staff and maintain it. Also, one of my greatest concerns is the ability for the foundation to collect on the current or future fundraising pledges, giving economic uncertainties and in turn the city's remedies to seek reimbursement if there are shortfalls there. And then lastly, the rising costs of our existing and future necessary CIP projects, as well as the city personnel to support those. And we definitely need to plan as stewards of the city's resources for those necessities. Overall, and given, I would say, the limited reach of this use, I don't see how this is a responsible allocation of our taxpayer dollars, again, as proposed at this time.
Councilmember Grant.
Thank you. There is a lot we agree on up here on this matter, and that in and of itself is comforting, because I think in the long run we'd all like to see this project happen. Maybe some more so and some less so than others, but there's a lot of ideas that have come forward, and I think we all agree that we're extremely indebted to the community, especially the hardworking foundation, the president of the foundation's here, the hardworking Tuckers who have dedicated 10 years to this, the residents. And we really are grateful to all of those people who entertained this very, very tiny spark of an idea and brought it all the way forward 10 years to the absolutely wonderful idea that it is today. I do support moving forward with the community auditorium. I actually agree with Councilmember Stapleton that it would be wonderful to be able to merge not only lectures, but all manner of dance, theater, and other arts into this facility. And I actually believe that that can happen with the way it's designed. We're looking here beyond books, to quote the phrase of the foundation. And there has been a lot of creative and innovative ideas from the very beginning on this project. I was actually on the library board with former library board member Jill Johnson Tucker when she first brought this idea forward, and the amount of innovation and study and preparation in bringing this project to our, to tonight has been immense. And I personally know that every single stone was turned over and every idea was vetted in trying to be comprehensive in offering this to the community. And that doesn't even start to mention the amount of really heavy lift to go out to the community and make the community have the community understand what this would mean and why it was valuable to be able to participate, i.e., with people's hard-earned money. So I'm in favor of expanding the library and making it even a greater cultural hub than it already is for our community. I think we all know in this city how valuable our library system is to every single resident. We get more visitors to the library than anything else in our city other than our public beaches. And that doesn't even take into account our E-branch, which is an enormous benefit to our community. After discussing this with people in the community over the last couple days, and after hearing Councilmember Stapleton's really innovative idea to bring the theater arts into the existing project, I think that there's a path forward for that. I understand that, merging these two concepts is not easy, and that, it's going to task everyone to come together to accommodate each other. Everybody is not going to get exactly what they want, but it will be a negotiation. But I do believe that given the innovation and technology in the arts and the creative thinking and the big minds that are on this, we can bring this all together in the existing footprint. My real concern is that we forego this opportunity, and it is daunting to think about the amount of money, but after hearing council members speak about, especially people who have been on the finance committee, I know Councilmember O'Neill, Mayor Pro Tem O'Neill, and Councilmember Stapleton have been on the finance committee for quite a while. I highly respect Larry Tucker, who was on our finance committee for a long time. After hearing that conversation, I don't have any doubt that we can afford this project, and I believe that it is a project that we should be investing in. Delays have already increased the costs. If we were to reject the bids today and delay for some sort of expansive review and redesign, we're looking at spending way more than what we're anticipating tonight. We're already balking at the increase in costs that were due to the pandemic, increases in the supply chain, problems from the supply chain, all of that. If we look at changing this project, integrally, like the very basic pieces of the project, and redesigning this whole thing, we're looking at an immense added cost, as well as forfeiting the community trust and likely much of the money that's already been committed. So I'm not in favor of doing that. I'd like to see us move forward and approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Weigand.
Yeah, I just had some questions for staff. What was the dollar amount that we shifted when we punted this last time? We had some dollars that were COVID dollars that were expiring, and then we sent them over to the Public Works yard to redo the fueling station?
Off the top of my head, I should grab that. It's about $4 million just ARPA money, and we moved that over to the fuel system at the yard.
Got it. So I kind of remember discussing that, saying I didn't want this council to get lost on that money was allocated from a previous council's decision to have that be for this project.
You could bring that money back. Just remember that we just swapped it. So the fuel system was funded out of the FFP. We just moved it there and took the FFP general fund and put it back on this project.
Is the builder, AMG, are they here tonight?
I don't believe, Peter, I don't.
Has this idea that Councilman Stapleton, and I know that you, Dave, you kind of thought of this idea when you looked at, the future projections of some of our expenditures down the way when it came to capital improvement projects.
So maybe if I can expand on that, if that would you?
Yeah, but do you think, since the builder's not here, do you think we could get and I don't know if I don't think it's really good public policy to do it, but giving me just, some discussion here on could they make this theater component work as is? If we accepted the bids, could we, expend some money? And do we have to accept or reject the bids tonight? Can that discussion, come back to us, say in 2 weeks, say in a really short, brief amount of time after we talk to the builder and say, look, if this council has a 4 votes to move forward, could we marry the two entities together and accept the bids? And that might not even be good policy to even do, but I want to hear is there enough room to even do it in the footprint that we have? But look, as Councilmember Avery said, are we bullish on Newport Beach? I'm extremely bullish on Newport Beach, and I want to see this project built. But what Councilmember Stapleton is saying, it does make some sense. If we're gonna spend $10 million to build a theater that doesn't even have any windows that looks out to one of the prettiest spots of the city, it's not the wisest thing to do if we have an opportunity to do it. Now, if we say we reject bids and we go through this whole process over again, we're going to see another probably $1 million added to the price tag. Who knows? The Newport Mesa School District just approved a theater for $40 million at Estancia. So, where does it stop? They had a bond that they did it off of, but we're using just, general fund dollars to figure this out. But, I think we can do this project. I like the project. I ran on a campaign that supported this project. So I don't want to delay this any further, but I want to know in a pretty short amount of time, and maybe it's not tonight, but maybe it's in a couple of weeks, can the builder add and incorporate this theater component? My kids' school, we couldn't find a performance for them to go to do their holiday performance and their annual theater performance. They don't need a big fancy green room and a backstage. They just need a stage. And so I think that there's room for our schools, our private schools, dance groups that are in the private for kids. There's a whole bunch of programming that we can put in. There's probably corporate shareholders meetings that can occur in this theater. So I think there's programming. I know there's programming for this long term. But could we make a bigger theater that works? But I don't want to punt that for a long rejection of bids and come back and have us come back here and look at another $1 million potential increase. But I do think this city has a way to figure out how to fund this project today. But is what Councilmember Stapleton is saying, and sorry, Dave, you said you probably have a bit to explain about that, and I cut you off, and my apologies. But on the campaign trail, 4 of us up here were asked, do you support a West Side Community Center? And we all said, yeah, we'd like to. We don't know what that means. Well, here's a potential for the means to marry these two entities, bring them here in this grand location we have, and give us something for potential for new. So a lot of great ideas. I hate to waste money by just delaying and something that doesn't work, but maybe you got something for me.
Mayor, do you want me to?
How far along are these plans right now? Are we in full MEPs and ready for final submissions?
Current plans are complete, and they've been bid, and they're ready to go.
Correct.
I do have the architect here tonight. If I don't have the builder, but I have the architect.
No, I think if we have full plans, I mean, I think the answer would be it's a lot of work and needs kind of a full redesign to make something like that happen.
And again, I don't want to do something that makes things worse. But for now, put me in the camp for approving the project as is, and I'd love to figure out a way to get us to marry those two entities. But if it's not going to happen soon, then nothing's going to happen at all.
Okay. Thank you. I will be very brief, I promise. And then we'll go to a quick public comment. Look, I'm a fan of building anything in the city is the reality of it for me. I think when we put infrastructure in, It's always horrible in the beginning. It's horrible through these conversations. It's always too expensive. I was sadly actually doing my own cost per square foot on Balboa Island and realized it's more than a lecture hall, which made me really sad. It's 1,200 square feet, so it's maybe not fair. But, you know, I do think that there is a long vision here, and I do appreciate what everyone involved has done, is that this is building for the long vision. I actually really appreciate the look all my colleagues have taken up here, because they've said the same thing and put their own spin on it in every way. I think the irony is everyone wants it. Some of us can't get there. For me, I am there. I believe in spending the money now and moving forward with it. But I also can understand the concerns we have, and I do like the idea of fully utilizing a space. I think that's just good business. But that's all I have to say about that. Let's jump out to public comment so we can get rolling. Perfect. And feel free. See, we have 2 beautiful microphones up there. You can take turns quickly. These 2 are pros. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Corey Kramer, a resident of Newport Beach and a partner of Eagle 4 Partners. We own Balboa Bay Resort, Newport Beach Country Club, Vea Newport Beach, and the newly opened Pendry Newport Beach. We have invested hundreds of millions of dollars here in Newport Beach, and will continue to invest hundreds of millions more. We are very bullish on Newport Beach, as we all live, work, and play here. We believe strongly in the vital importance of Newport Center and Fashion Island as the heart of our city. It is the civic center where commerce, hospitality, and ingenuity all reside and thrive. We support all forms of new investment, elevating Newport Center to its fullest potential. The Library Lecture Hall is in reality much more than just a lecture hall, as we've discussed tonight. Its vision is broader and more encompassing. It's really a civic venue for cultural and intellectual pursuits, arts and music, business conferences, symposiums, and more. It's a civic auditorium. Like the great halls of modern cities, the auditorium will be a central part of Newport Beach's civic and life and cultural fabric. Please accept the gift and greenlight this project tonight. Thank you for your leadership and continued investment in Newport Beach. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. I'm gonna let us do it once, and then there'll be no more clapping from this point forward. Thank you.
Okay.
Yours, we already know we would clap for, Nancy. Go ahead.
Nancy Gardner. When I was a kid growing up here, we'd go on a family trip, and this is like in the 50s, and people would say, where are you from? And you go, Newport Beach. And they'd either look blank or they'd say, is that where all the artists live? And you're going, that's Laguna Beach. And now you can go to other continents, and they ask you where you're from, and you say Newport Beach, and they nod their heads and think what a great place it is. Our coastline hasn't changed. Our harbor hasn't changed, really, except for the boats are bigger. What has changed is the investments that we have made in this city. And I find it odd that when I put together programs with some of the groups I'm involved with, we don't even look at Newport because there isn't a good facility for it. We have the Evelyn Hart Event Center, we have the Friends Room, we have the community room, but they're really not ideal for it. They don't have great acoustics, and the seating isn't right. We have, can we maybe get someplace up in Irvine? Can we get some center that has that kind of stage seating? So I really hope that we will have something that we deserve as a city, which is this lecture hall. And just one caution, the needs of a theater are so different from a lecture hall that I could make the program a lot more expensive, actually, I think, than economical.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Dennis Baker, and I'm going to speak from many different hats. The first thing I'm going to touch on is I'm the director of short film programming at the Newport Beach Film Festival. Been there for 23 years. I will tell you that every single year we have a tremendously hard time finding venues to show movies. We show movies in Costa Mesa. We are the Newport Beach Film Festival. What's that about? And the reason is we can't get venues down here to show films. This would be a great addition for another place to show films. Now somebody, that's only a week a year. No, we show films all year round. You may not know that, but we do. We have a film society. We show films all year round. That would be a great venue to use for that particular screening. We've been showing them at the Village. We show them where we can find a theater to rent. So that's one hat. The other hat is, as a local property owner, my property has doubled. I have properties in my neighborhood go for $4 million. These are residences, and the numbers are crazy. We're talking about numbers that values in Corona del Mar here that almost doubling in 10 years, that type of thing. It's nuts. So the idea is that we're talking about the cost of 3 or 4 lots is what the amount of money that you're talking about from the city's part of it. So that's my property owner hat. I move on to the drama part. I taught drama for many years as one of the many things that I've taught. I taught it with a backstage that was only 4 feet wide and 8 feet long. That's where we were at a little theater. So the idea is that people who put on drama, people who put on plays are very creative. So I don't know the actual, what the structure would be, but literally I have been to theaters. If you go to the Shakespeare, the theater in the Roundup, UCI, you see people running all around. They got a little teeny background area where they can do their changes and so on and so forth. So thespians are very, very adaptable. So that's my drama hat. I was also involved in dance. I served with Councilmember Grant on the board for the Ballet Pacifica for many years. We have had dance performances right outside here in the grass. We've had them in Sherman Gardens and so on. So artists are very creative and very adaptable, and they can figure out how to make things work. So I think that you would have a venue here that everybody in the arts, performing arts, is going to make work for them without having to go in and change what the design is for some particular application. I have a bias. I'm a member of the foundation. So I have to let you know that. And finally, you've already spent a lot of money. So there's a thing about like cut your losses or follow your good expenditure with good expenditure. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you. Mayor Blum, council members, my name is Jeff Cole, Newport Beach resident. I too have a couple of hats I'm going to talk about. My primary role here is really on behalf of the Crystal Cove Conservancy, which Jill Johnson Tucker alluded to earlier. I'm a 10-year board member, former chair, and for those of you who don't know, it's a nonprofit organization. Its really mission is to preserve and protect the Crystal Cove State Park and Historic District, but also as our primary mission is education for marine sciences, local marine life, wildlife habitat protection in the park. And we seek to achieve our education objectives through a couple of areas. One is field trips, by the way, that are launched here in Newport Harbor for K through 12 underprivileged youths. But big part of that is our speaker series. And it was alluded to earlier. Matter of fact, I'm here because our CEO is currently leading a speaker series as we speak. And the speaker today is Azzedine Downs, who's a best-selling author, CEO of the International Animal Welfare Fund. But we've also have a robust speakers. Recent speakers have included Carl Safina, world-renowned marine researcher, Angela Darcy, who's the CEO of the Sacred Places Institute for Indigenous People. We have these speaker events usually at the park, or in some cases when they're too large, we've utilized hotels, like sometimes we use the Pelican Hill Resort. We've also actually utilized the Oasis Senior Center. I can assure you this proposed lecture hall would be utilized by the Conservancy several times a year. It is ideal for what we're trying to accomplish. It's state of the art as far as the presentation capabilities, but also because it's just parking, built-in parking, which hasn't been talked about, which is so unique here already. But also just the prestige Newport Beach address is going to be a location that's going to be very attractive to a lot of not only our members, but these are speakers that are open to the public. I know Councilmember Avery and I think Mayor Blum also was concerned about utilization. So the Conservancy will be an organization that will definitely use this facility. But I also have another role. My day job is I'm an executive vice chairman of Cushman & Wakefield. We're a global commercial real estate firm. I'm actively engaged and member of boards of 2 of the largest national commercial real estate organizations, Urban Land Institute and NAIOP, which is the National Association of Industrial and Office Properties. Both those organizations have large Orange County chapters. Both regularly have events for the members and the public, monthly, quarterly, speakers presenting on market forecasts, development trends, tenant services, industry trends. open to the public as well. Currently utilize almost exclusively Irvine hotel facilities. Occasionally when we can get into the Balboa Bay Club, we've used that, we've used the Pacific Club, but I can tell you, in my opinion, this facility is really designed and catered to these highly desirable for this kind of use. So in that, I'm excited about this. It's a venue that the city of Newport Beach is deserving of and would be proud of for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mayor Blum, members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier. Unlike the previous two speakers, I don't have a lot of hats. I'm speaking only for myself. And for myself, I support the library lecture hall, and I think the city could pay for it. And I would caution, though, that the plans that the bid is for, even at their high cost, are very specifically for a lecture hall. And calling it an auditorium doesn't turn it into an auditorium. And when people think of a civic auditorium, it's a much bigger facility than this. And I don't think a civic auditorium or a combination of lecture hall and theater could fit on this within the footprint. If you are going ahead, though, with the library lecture hall, the continually rising costs are disturbing. And the Mayor Pro Tem said he understood this, but I don't understand it myself. The date on which this council rejected the original 5 bids was actually not March, it was April 25th. Normally, when you reject bids, you hope that you're going to get a better result, either by designing down the costs or expecting a better environment for it. But I noticed in the slides we saw, the city's own estimate went up from 14 million when the bids were first sent out to 18.5 million the second time they went out. And the bids we got back, the lowest of those, is higher, but all but one of the 5 bids we got originally. So what happened there? Why did the city's estimate, why did the city rebid something estimating even higher cost than it did originally, which seems to be a big part of the increase we're facing? I don't have the Mayor Pro Tem's understanding of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mayor Blum and City Council members, Steve Rosansky, President of Newport Beach Chamber of Commerce and former City Councilman, Mayor of Newport Beach. I really didn't come here to address this portion of it, but sitting in the audience, it did harken back to about 15 years ago when I served on the building committee for this very building that we sit in. And I seem to recall that we were talking about, or at least it was batted around in the community, that this was going to be a $40 million civic center or project. And as we all know, it probably tripled that when we finished. And so it's not unusual that projects are expanded, envisioned differently, costs go up. We've come through a pandemic, and certainly that's affected things. But don't be deterred by the cost. As I think Larry Tucker pointed out earlier, we're a well-funded city. We run budget surpluses every year. I recall when we put the facility financing plan in place, I was there, I voted for it, the initial one. And we anticipated tens of millions of dollars in addition to the City Hall financing to accomplish that program. And as you all know, other than the COPs that we issued for this site, we never borrowed that money because this is a great city. This is a city that can get things done. And we have the money here to afford a project like this. Aside from that, I'll speak as a representative of the business community. I think that, yes, we're talking about 40 or some odd lectures here, but there is a significant opportunity here to use this facility from the business side of the community. I wish Corey had mentioned it when he was up here. I mean, obviously he's a partner in several of the major hotels here in town, and they bring in large groups. And I know for a fact that when large groups come in, you think, oh, they're just using the hotel ballrooms and things like that. They always, if they're here for any significant amount of time, they want to go off-site. Every group that comes in looks to either do a recreational thing off-site or part of their program off-site. This would be an ideal facility. I mean, we have Vea on one side, we have the new Pendry on the other side, and the Balboa Bay Resort. Pelican Hill. All these places bring in large groups that are looking for venues like this. And they sometimes do go out of the city because we don't have that type of facility here. So I think you're being short-sighted if you're just looking at, witty lecture series and the other series that the library puts on. I think that there's a big demand here. I know personally as the Chamber of Commerce president, I get calls all the time for people looking for venues here in the city of Newport Beach. And I have to say, well, you might try Marina Park, you might try the community room, but they're not really suited for what they want. I know when I'm telling them that I'm giving them a recommendation that is not, I don't feel is a good recommendation, but that's the only one I have to give them. So that's the one I give them. So I think that, from the standpoint of even the cost, I mean, I know Will, he's a genius when it comes to the finances of it, but, to say that, there's $410,000 or whatever in expenses associated with the facility, and then to lay it off on 40 programs is not really fair. There will be a lot more than 40 activities that will be done here. And I think that when you look at the revenue stream that this building could potentially generate, I think you could possibly have a net positive, not a negative. So please take that into consideration when you make your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers on this item? Feel free to head on up.
Thank you, council members and mayor. I'm very bullish on Newport Beach, and I'm also very bullish on the Library Foundation and our community as a whole. I'm so impressed with all the things we do have in this city, and I'm sure a lot of it is what people refer to when they are in other parts of the world and know about Newport Beach. We have amazing recreational facilities, kind of never-ending recreational facilities. This is our one real opportunity to have a true public-private partnership with deep involvement and commitment from a broad swath of the community, including people outside this community that want to see this lecture hall, civic auditorium. It doesn't matter which you call it. It's an important venue that will be a state-of-the-art venue for important speakers. We bring in first-class speakers to this first-class city, and we put them in a third-rate meeting room to speak. And they perform stellarly. And then when we mention what we are hoping to build, what we are planning to build, they are over the top excited about it. Again, it's a first-class venue that you will all be very proud to have supported. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Seeing no more speakers on this, let's move it up here. Councilmember Stapleton.
Yeah, I'll make a recommendation. I can promise you I don't want to see this die. I want to continue to make sure this project happens. But after seeing this opportunity, I just can't get it out of my head. There seems like a perfect marriage between a theater and a lecture hall and creating this cultural arts center. I've tried for the last week to find a way to change order this project to acceptance in good faith to a lot of the partners that we're trying to get done with this. It just can't happen, in my opinion. So again, I will happily champion this. I'm hoping this could be a quick turnaround. I'm not looking to make this anything other than it is, but I think in the short term, I think we need to reject the current bid and effective immediately reform the ad hoc committee on this project, Mayor Blum, Councilwoman Grant, and myself, with the goal of creating a cultural arts center here in Newport Beach.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Sorry, I'm thinking about that proposal. To Councilmember Wigan's point, yes, it would be bad policy to try to approve this and then turn it into something that is not bid. At that point, you have no idea what the cost overruns are going to be of the change orders, and I think we all know that one. So I agree with you that would be bad. That would be bad public policy. And I hear you on the campaign, although during the campaign we didn't know it was 24 million, just like we didn't know it when we first were moving forward with this. So Steve, I'm going to tell you the phrase "don't be deterred by the cost" is one of the worst things I've ever heard in public comment by someone who served on council before. That mentality is anathema to what most people have been running on in the last decade, and it's not the ethos of this city. When the the point brought up about the amount of debt that was brought in on City Hall and the amount that was spent on this, that partially tore our city apart for a while. When people found out the cost of this building, I don't want to repeat that, and so there is something about making sure that we're being prudent and reining it in that is important while we're talking about that, because that's just, don't be deterred by the cost. It's not that's never been a decision that's not even crossed my mind in 7 years on council, and it won't for my last year either. So I think we've got to pay attention to not just this project, like I said, but the future ones. So I think it's creative and a good compromise. I think to Mr. Avery's point, to see this utilized to the maximum, it really does need to have that partnership with a theater program, one that is done well and could be doing much better if that's where the combo goes. So I would support the creative solution come up with that's been come up with by council members Avery and Stapleton. Thanks.
Councilmember Grant.
First and foremost, we do need to be a good shepherd of our community funds. That is what we all sit up here to do. That's our first job, our most important job. And I do truly believe that the approval of this project is good shepherding of our money. We're going to get a state-of-the-art facility for half the cost of that facility. We've got the buy-in from the community, hundreds of donations, I believe, if not dozens, close to 100, representing the true commitment of the community to this type of a project. I do think that we've heard very capable comments from former Finance Committee member Tucker and from former council members that were at the podium and council that's up here about the finance of it. And I do think that there's a path forward on the financing, especially given the matching money from the foundation. There's been a little bit of a talk about the foundation maybe not raising the money. They are a proven entity, not just on this project, but year after year after year, they give large amounts of monies to our city to fund programming and other costs related to cultural arts in our city. I do not doubt that they will continue that Sisyphean effort and come up with the money. I have no doubt. I have full faith in the people that are involved in this project. I also think that any extension of this project is just going to escalate the costs, jeopardize the donations, and in the long run, if we do get a project, I have no doubt it will be state-of-the-art. I have no doubt it will be fully utilized, but it will cost more, maybe even double, at the point that we actually get it in play. I am 100% in favor of this project. There's just no reason for us to delay, and I do really believe that we can bring our arts entities together in this city, the lecture hall people, the community theater people, the film festival, the hotels, the other organizations, our schools, business community can all come together and find ways to utilize this project and bring it to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you. So I don't have a clear consensus up here, so perhaps we get a straw vote on Joe's proposal first. Is that something, or Councilmember Stapleton's? Sure. Is that something that works? Do you need us to clarify that up here? No, okay, you're clear with what it is? You get a straw vote on that one, real quick. All in favor?
I'm sorry, can you raise your hands? It's Kleiman, Stapleton, O'Neill for Joe's proposal.
Is everyone clear on Joe's proposal?
Yeah.
Would you mind repeating it, Councilmember Stapleton?
Yeah, it's rejecting the current bid and putting the ad hoc committee together with myself, Mayor Blum, and Councilwoman Grant to find a way as quickly as possible to get this opportunity where we can marry these two projects together with the theater and the lecture hall into a Newport Beach Cultural Arts Center.
What does that do, Dave, for our bid and the risk?
So if you reject the bid, we'll need to bring that and formally reject that. bid. You have till probably January to reject that bid, the first meeting in January. But we do need to formally reject the bid, and then what this proposal would be is to look at how this theater would move into this design. I would say, if you want, I have the architect here tonight who might be able to speak to that. It's complex, but it's I believe it's doable. It was designed as a lecture hall. I don't know how much modification. It's not a complete redesign when I asked him about that, but there is some back of the house items that would have to be taken care of. You'd have to rebid it. You're going back into the open market. Again, I can't predict that. Some of the builders are saying that we've leveled out. Some are saying the supply chain's lightening up now. We can get electric parts now once the labor goes down. So the upside risk is less than the downside risk, but there is a risk. And if you did add some square footage to the building, you would actually have some cost increase on that too. And again, I don't know what size that is. There are 2 slurs on the property. The Irvine Company has a slur that we can't go over 10,000 square feet, and there's a slur on parking that would have to be looked at too. There was a comment on CEQA. I think CEQA we could still category exempt it, so the process of moving forward could go quickly if you could get the agreement among the parties.
So there's the risk, though, we would be at a higher number.
There's always a risk of a higher number. Like we saw in the last one, February to now, we gained $2 million basically on the cost of the project for whatever reasons. I can't explain it. I know there's supply chains. We had 5 bidders originally. We had 3 on this bid. The same low bidder, same company was the low bidder on both. And unfortunately, I don't have him here tonight to talk to you about that.
Do you have any other questions, Brad? Okay. All right. And then what are the other recommendations that we're looking at right now?
I'll make a subsequent
recommendation
that we move forward with the bids, the low bid, and we instruct the Library Foundation to reach out into the community and work together to find pathways to including any arts entities that would like to be included in the MOU and participate in this project.
Can we get a comment on that?
Well, could I get clarification, Councilmember Grant, on what do you mean by into the MOU? You mean the actual funding MOU itself?
Maybe not amending the MOU, but reaching out and finding some kind of compromise within the community so that we can incorporate all of the different elements of arts and business and culture that have been listed out here today.
Okay, so that's a separate type of agreement.
Separate agreement.
Support. But in the case of moving forward with this one, though, we do have to do a change to the current MOU we have with the foundation because obviously the dollar amount isn't at the appropriate dollar amount for the current bid right now. So that would have to be adjusted. So you're saying to continue with that piece of that?
Yeah, accept the bids and move forward. Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Weigand.
I think what Mayor Pro Tem was saying is if there's the votes for approval moving forward, he wants to then have a discussion on the MOU. I think, do I have that right, Mayor Pro Tem O'Neill?
Well, you'd have to because we don't have a straw vote on what the terms of the MOU would be, the amended MOU would be that we'd be willing to negotiate.
Councilmember Avery.
Yeah, I'm, we're just right here at it, and I'm worried that we don't have the tolerance to take a higher bid after all this. That's my concern. And, it's going to still be a great facility, and I think within the envelope of the building, something can happen there. Maybe the architect could speak to that, but we're not, this is the thing. And then down the road, revisit ways to temporary or whatever to make room to do the kind of programming some of us up here, all of us I think want, is to make the building more flexible, and we're kind of specifically saying around the performing arts as well as lecture hall and some of the other uses. But I think I'm concerned that we just, that's a risk I think, at least I'm not comfortable with.
Okay, so you have we're moving forward with what then? Where are we at? We do.
So-
We do need another straw vote. So let's jump in here.
So do you want to do a straw vote of moving forward with the project and then have a discussion about the MOU after that?
Funding.
If assuming that that's where the votes come out?
Sure, let's do that. Okay, go ahead.
Straw vote on moving forward, Grant, Blom, Avery, and Wigan.
All right. Thank you. We're moving on to public comments on
Wait,
agenda
but,
and
Mayor?
Yeah, sorry.
If we are to move forward, a key
Thank
piece
you.
that's coming back with the contract award is a MOU that is, set up to do that and have the appropriate amount in escrow. So I do think, given some of the discussion that happened, staff needs some guidance on that revisement of that MOU.
Okay.
Of what we are looking for and coming back.
As far as the shared piece of the financing?
And if there's anything else additional that needs to be considered with it as we put that together, any points along those lines.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, the question is, how much do you want to front? So do you want to front 17 straight up? Because that's what the city would be committed to. So as it's currently written in the MOU, the contemplation was that 50% would be deposited in escrow before we accepted the bids. There's really good reason for that, but the question is this body going to move forward now with less than 50%, in fact, substantially less than 50% in there? So it'd be 7 out of the 24. So that's the question, is that what the body would like to move forward with? Because we need to rewrite the MOU to contemplate that. And then the other part of that is, do you want to see $0 contributed toward the facilities maintenance from any programming inside of any of the programming that's put on by the Library Foundation? Or is there a surcharge of any kind or a rental fee or anything like that? That's the question, is going forward, do you want the city to pick up the full $415,000 plus each year? So those are two things that this body's got to figure out in terms of rewriting the MOU.
Councilmember Avery?
Yeah, I'm certainly in favor of everybody participating in enjoyment of the new building would pay for that, help offset the maintenance costs. And certainly everything we could do to do that. I don't think that should be solely the city's responsibility. Thank you.
Okay, so we're looking for, Mr. Tucker, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I mean, this is a one-way negotiation if the foundation isn't involved in it. I don't technically speak for them, but the way that the draft amended MOU that was submitted in March and then resubmitted, I think, a month or two ago, contemplates is the money would go up at the immediately before the actual acceptance of the bids. And to the extent that the draft says the pledges would be delivered, to the extent there are pledges, and then the foundation would have an agreement to continue fundraising until it's achieved its half. In terms of the maintenance, there was nothing put in there in terms of the income from the the facility, and I didn't expect Dave to guess at that. He's put in what the expenses were, but there's income, and especially there's going to be a fair amount of income if it actually is operated all the time. But keep in mind that's a library parcel first and foremost. So everything that's going to be done in terms of programs has to fit in with the demand for parking of the library. So it's not going to be like 100% just because it's going to conflict to a certain extent. But somebody else is paying over $11 million for a city building, and then you want them to help maintain the building? That seems kind of odd to me. But that's part of what the negotiations should be. So we don't have to have the bid accepted, at the next council meeting. Hopefully we can all get together and have the subcommittee and wrestle this out so that we end up with something. And I know Mr. O'Neill's an excellent attorney, and I'm sure he'll be formidable, but the council direction is to get the project done. So we'll kind of hope that we can come up with something that that everybody can live with. But it can't be done tonight, and we can't really figure out what it's going to be like tonight. But you can go ahead and talk about your direction, and the foundation will have some different thoughts, I'm sure. And at that point, it's direction to go to the negotiations. And as one of my old law clients used to tell me, Larry, make the best deal you can, but make a deal. So hopefully we'll do that.
Thank you.
Yes, Mayor, I would note, at this point, I think we would bring the item back at the first meeting in January, and that does give us time to accept, within the time frame. And with that timing, I think it would be helpful if perhaps there's a council subcommittee that would work with staff together on getting the MOU revised and brought back along with that contract award.
Great, perfect. Okay.
I would suggest that it probably be 3 people who voted for it. So I think I'm going to exit from that subcommittee.
He's going to exit from that one. Perfect. Do you need me to tell you who those are? I'll deal with that later. Perfect. Great. So we've wrapped that one up. That's a nice, easy lift for a study session. Let's go on to public comments for agenda and non-agenda items. Public comments for agenda and non-agenda items? Anyone? Okay. Seeing none. There was none. Good. Oh, you did want to come up, please. If we're going to speak, please feel free to make your way on up. This is agenda and non-agenda items.
About the noise map revision, is this the right time to talk about?
We have that coming up later on in the agenda.
Wait for comments?
Wait for comments on that one. Great. Mr. Harp, do you have a closed session announcement? Oh, I'm sorry. Are we? Lovely.
Hello, my name is Laura Curran. I'm a Newport Beach resident. I wanted to comment on the study, the item to amend the municipal code. So we do now have the municipal code available in the lobby and at the library for people that would like to see the code with its proposed revisions. I did submit some questions, which some of these were addressed in the staff report, but many of them were not. One is that this code makes many abbreviations, such as Cal, Biz, and Prof code. Now, I know what that is, but if you're a reader, and if you're searching online, which is what many times council asks us to do, you would want to look for the Business and Professions Code. These abbreviations should be written out so that the public is reading something in the way that they would talk about it. There are some key provisions which were struck out, such as 3.26, the Healthcare and Recreations Facility Revenue Bond Ordinance, which said that the city had a stated intent to enable nonprofit healthcare recreational facilities to lower the cost of these facilities to provide better and more efficient service, and to enable nonprofit recreation facilities to provide sports or recreational opportunities. This may have happened, but it's not explained in the memos how we are fulfilling the obligations for not-for-profit health care. Also, there is a deletion of the section 20.34, which is the conversion or demolition of affordable housing. This section is struck out. It's all redlined, and it is not explained what is replacing that and under what conditions the city is allowed to not comply with with affordable housing mandates. So it's important in these reports, we as residents look to the staff to help us understand the context. And that helps us maintain confidence in the projects. So I would ask the staff and council to think about these topics and several others, which I included in my letter, which is in the packet at the very back as you look at this. And on a similar trend, for the item number 10 tonight, you are taking away subparagraph F7 of council policy, subparagraph F of council F7, and saying that not-for-profit organizations do not, the city's obligation to do due diligence on certain nonprofit lessees at renting city property will be deleted. And there is no explanation what due diligence will replace the city's requirement to ensure that organizations renting city property at below market rates are legitimately able to fulfill their obligations as lessees, and what nonprofit organizations currently operating in the city this might affect. Again, for the public, if you're interested in reading the code, it's available online, and it is also at the library or at the council. Thank you, and we appreciate the fact that we have copiers that know how to print these things. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments on agenda or non-agenda items? Seeing none. Wonderful. Mr. Harp, do you have a closed session announcement?
Thank you. The City Council will adjourn to closed session to meet with the city's real property negotiators regarding negotiations with Robert Wine related to the American Legion property at 215 15th Street in Newport Beach. To meet with the city's legal counsel regarding the case titled Randy Parker versus City of Newport Beach. To meet with the city's labor negotiators regarding negotiations with the Newport Beach Fire Association and the city clerk, and to discuss the city clerk's performance. And that's all set forth on the agenda under item 4A through E. The city clerk will recuse herself from the labor negotiations item based on personal potential impact to her finances. Thank you.
We are going to recess until 6:50. 6:50. I'm sorry. Yeah. 6:50? Yeah. Yeah. 24 minutes. You got it. Call the meeting to order for the November 14th regular City Council meeting. Madam Clerk, roll call.
The record will reflect that all members of council are present.
Herb, do you have a closed session report?
Thank you, Mayor. There's no closed session report this evening.
Let's move on to an invocation by Pastor David Mann of Calvary Chapel of Costa Mesa.
Thank you, Mayor and entire council. It's amazing to be with you again this evening as this 2023 year nears a close. We are 6 weeks away from that happening and 9 days away from Thanksgiving. And Lord, we come before you tonight thankful, Lord, for this year and all that has transpired, all that has been accomplished. We pray, Father, now that you would bless again the gathering here. We pray, Father, for the mayor, the entire council, your blessing upon them in decisions and matters before us tonight. And in the days ahead, bless their families. Bless the attorney, the clerk, and Lord, bless everyone in the department, in the fire department, Lord, the police department, the chief, and all of his staff. Lord, it is not without recognizing all the safety, all the protection, all that has been active throughout this year and each day. As we receive that in the residents that live here, we pray for all of them, for the peace, the protection, and the safety to continue. Bless now, Lord, our gathering. Bring upon the decisions and the matters your wisdom. As we plan our ways, it is you, Lord, that directs our steps. Bless now, we ask, in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
If you'll please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to this great country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, notice to the public.
The City Council of Newport Beach welcomes and encourages community participation. Public comments are generally limited to 3 minutes per person to allow everyone to speak. Written comments are encouraged as well. The City Council has a discretion to extend or shorten the time limit on agenda or non-agenda items.
Now it's time for council announcements or reports from council members on committee activities and time to request an A1 item for a future agenda. Councilmember Kleiman?
A long night ahead of us and behind us, so I'll forego my report. Thank you.
Councilmember Stapleton? He's also foregoing?
I'll take her time. I'll be real brief. I just want to say congrats to Ron Simon and his scholarship dinner. He hosted 300 scholarship winners at the Bay Club. I'm one of the ambassadors for that program, and it's incredible to see what he does. He's a resident here in Newport Beach, and what he does for youth in this in Orange County to get them to make sure they're first generation to go to college is just remarkable. So also attended the Citizen and Business Person Awards, so congratulations to Larry Hayes and Bob Olson. Terrific honors and well received for sure. I want to thank and congratulate Marco Ravitz with the Knights of Columbus. They hosted their car show and raised tens of thousands of dollars for local charities here. Also attended the Ron Salisbury. He celebrated 100 years with El Cholo, so that was really cool and something we celebrate, especially in the restaurant industry. And then SoCal Edison, I attended one of their leadership roundtables at UCI. That is something we continue to strive to have resiliency and backup and continue to give people power to their homes, which seems like something that should be happening, but working very closely with SoCal Edison to make sure that continues to get better and better. And then this, I think tomorrow or Thursday, attending the Oasis Thanksgiving luncheon. So tomorrow, yeah, so I'm looking for that. And my last thing, if you guys want to put the photo up there, I just want to congratulate our Distinguished Citizen program. We graduated our 9th program. This is a 5-week program. It just finished last Wednesday. I couldn't be more proud of these individuals and all that they went through to accomplish being part of our 260 graduates of the Distinguished Citizen program through the city of Newport Beach. So some of them are here in the audience tonight, so congratulations to you guys. So well done. Yeah.
Councilmember Grant.
I want to take this opportunity to recognize our police and fire first responders in our city and our greater community, including the Orange County Fire Authority. These past few weeks have unfortunately been very eventful, especially with the tragic loss of the North Hangar in Tustin. It's an iconic symbol of our community's esteemed military history, and it was a great effort, continuing effort by these first responders, so thank you. I also want to recognize all the organizations that brought us together over the last weekend in celebration of Veterans Day, especially the American Legion and the Balboa Island Improvement Association for their community events. Thank you.
Councilmember Wigan.
No report.
Member Avery.
No report.
Pro Tem.
I represented the city briefly at the Harbor Day school grand opening. So they've completed their second phase, which is what a lot of people have been seeing when they drive up San Joaquin. Beautiful, really well turned out. We had our finance committee. A lot of us attended the Citizen of the Year, and to everyone, I wish you a very happy and safe Thanksgiving.
Excellent. We're now on to matters which council members have asked to be placed on the future agenda. This is going to be a non-discussion item. Councilmember Kleiman and Wygant have asked council to consider formally opposing the language contained in Governor Newsom's March 2024 general obligation bond measure to fund behavioral health facilities that calls for a by right approval process for adult substance use disorder residential programs and recovery housing located in multifamily residential zones. Let's take a straw vote on that.
Unanimous, 7-0.
Right. Madam Clerk, will you read the notice regarding public comments on consent?
This is the time in which council members may pull items from the consent calendar for discussion. Those are items 1 through 20. Public comments are also invited on consent calendar items. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record. If any item is removed from the consent calendar by a council member, members of the public are invited to speak on each item for up to 3 minutes per item. All matters listed on our consent calendar are considered to be routine and will all be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. Council members have received detailed staff reports on each of the items recommending an action. There will be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time the City Council votes on the motion, unless members of the City Council request specific items to be discussed and are removed from the consent calendar for separate action.
Councilmember Kleiman, do you have any items to pull from consent or conflicts?
I do need to recuse myself on item number 6 due to the proximity to my personal residence.
Councilmember Stapleton?
I have none.
Councilmember Grant?
None, thank you.
Councilmember Wygant?
None, but there was some suggested minutes items that had mentioned my name, and I just wanted to confirm that item 4.A was the item I recused myself on for the last closed session item at the last meeting.
Councilmember Avery?
I have none.
Mayor Pro Tem? And I have none.
All right, I move the consent calendar with item number 1 showing the changes that Councilmember Wygand referenced, number 3 and number 9 being removed by staff and continuing to an unspecified date, and number 6 noting a recusal from Councilmember Kleiman.
We have a second. Seconded by Councilmember Stapleton. Let's go to public comments on consent calendar. Now would be the time to speak on any
I would like to
items on-
speak on item number 4 regarding the reevaluation of mooring rates.
Go ahead.
My name is Ian Austin, and I would like to draw your attention to the satellite image of yachts in Newport Harbor. There seems to be a discriminatory practice here in Newport Harbor regarding the rates that people pay per square foot. If everybody pays the same per square foot for occupying the tideland space, this problem should go away. But as of now, as if you look at that, the math on this flyer I handed out indicates that there is a vast discrepancy. To the left, you see offshore moorings that are approximately 6 by 18 feet wide. That's about 108 square feet. They pay $350 per year. That amounts to $3.24 per square foot. Right between, right next to those offshore moorings are private piers, needle piers, 660 square feet. That pier, according to the accounting department, pays 54 cents per square foot. That's $356 per year. And if they add that big yacht that is parked for free, basically, that yacht is 65 feet long, and it's about 20 feet wide. That amounts to approximately 1,300 square feet. Add that to the 660 square feet of the private pier. That means it's 1,960 square feet for which they pay $356 per year. That comes down to 18 cents per square foot. This is all the tidelands in the harbor. And why do I say that this appears to be discriminatory? If you page over to the next page, it says there are possible violations by the City of Newport Beach regarding the Tidelands Trust. This was also presented to the Harbor Commission before in a special meeting. It says there at number 1 that in the management conduct, according to the statutes of California, 1978, in the management, conduct, operations, and control of the lands, that's all the tidelands, every square foot in the Newport Harbor, and many improvements, betterments, and structures thereon, the city and its successors shall make no discrimination in rates, tolls, and charges for the use of services and connection therewith. And so I would like to point out that there are other discriminatory laws in Title 17, but the State Land Commission also spoke to this issue. And in number 2, the last bullet point, it says here that the city has a duty, and I quoted the law there, the city has the duty to act impartially in managing the trust properties. So as this council is going to consider reevaluating the mooring rates in the Newport Harbor, I would like to remind the city that according to the statutes of California, no discrimination is allowed. And there's a lot more we can say about this because most of those boats are parking for free, and it's self-explanatory here. Some can even rent their boats out for their spaces and to somebody else to come and park there for a basin marine rate. I've seen them on Craigslist advertising for $7,000. You can get my space on my private pier for $7,000. The city doesn't get any tax benefits from that. The owner of the home gets income from that. I just wanted to say that during our vocations, we learn about the difference between right and wrong. And if the city continues to ignore this discrepancy, it is wrong in my view.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Mayor Blum, honorable council members, my name is Wade Womack. Thank you for the opportunity to make comment tonight. I too would like to speak on item number 4. I've been asked to make these comments on behalf of a Newport Mooring Association committee that's been studying the rates in the harbor. The Newport Mooring Association has reviewed the proposed rates for what has been called city-owned moorings and has concluded that the proposed rates are inappropriate. We urge the city to postpone action until such time as the Mooring Association can study the rates and obtain our own appraisal, and also review the pending appraisal that the Harbor Commission said's been out there about a year that relates to the 1,000 permitted moorings. We think it would make more sense to look at it all at one time. As explained in a letter submitted by the NMA today, the appraisal does not use proper comparatives. The comparable uses are either inappropriate or have incorrect facts about charges. The comparables do not adequately take into account the lack of access to moorings in Newport compared to other places that have moorings. The cost of access is at least $400 per month for an in-water motorized dinghy. The additional cost of access to moorings needs to be deducted from any proposed rate. The proposed rate is unfair as compared to rates charged by the city for all other uses of tidelands. The proposed rates discriminate and violate the Beacon Bay Act. The appraisal does not use standard methods used by the State Lands Commission for rates charged for moorings. The proposed high rates discourage access. Each of these points is explained in detail in a letter submitted today by the NMA. There's no urgency on this matter. The city has had these city-owned moorings for years, if not decades. I think there's 14 of these that we're talking about here. And there's no urgency to vote today. We urge the city to postpone a vote on the rates charged until they can further be studied by the NMA together with the other pending city appraisal, which we have not yet seen. So I just say there's something odd here. We've been waiting a year for the appraisal related to the 1,000 moorings with permits, and now all of a sudden there's an unrelated yet related appraisal on these 14 licensed moorings. So it's just really strange that the Harbor Commission's gone out of their way to create a bunch of harbor code changes. I think you've been trying to reduce the codes in this city and has popped in with this new rates for the moorings. Thank you for your time.
Very much. Next speaker, please.
Mayor Blum, members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier. As you know, out of respect to your time and patience, I normally try to put most of my comments about the consent calendar in writing, but your agenda this week was a little bit heavy, so by the 5 o'clock deadline yesterday, I couldn't comment on all of them. So I have a small pile of them here that I want to make some quick comments about that I normally would have made in writing. The first of those is agenda item number 6, which is the vacation of which means abandonment of a public water easement across a private property in Cameo Highlands. This, in reading the staff report, I see is a required part of an agreement that the council made back in February with this homeowner. But looking at the agreement, I find it's quite unusual because although there was a city plan for what was going to happen, instead of bidding for that work in the public right-of-way to change water mains, the private owner was allowed to pick a contractor of their own, and instead of them reimbursing the city reimbursed them. Therefore, it would appear there was never a city contract, so there was never a notice of completion. And so I'm wondering if there's ever any public reporting of how much the city eventually contributed towards this, because it was open-ended in the agreement. The second item is item number 10, which is an amendment to a council policy called F7, which is how we treat income and other property. This is unusual in that you're being asked to delete something, but there's no red line showing exactly what it is that's being deleted. It has to do with your due diligence that you formally were supposed to exercise if the organization to which you were going to have a less than market rate rent charged to was not a nationally recognized organization. It said you had to look at the bylaws. That's being totally stricken. I would suggest, rather than totally striking that responsibility, at least you would want to know something about the organization that you're running to. So perhaps that's not quite ready. Item number 12 is about street repair program for the next fiscal year. It mentions some communities in which it's going to happen: Irvine Terrace, Corona Del Mar, Shore Cliffs, Dover Shores, Mariners, and Bay Knolls. I hadn't really heard of Bay Knolls. Apparently I live there. What I wanted to point out is on the vicinity map, there's actually 2 other locations that we would not know from the staff report that are over on University and Bison Avenues on the opposite side of the Upper Bay from all of those. Item number 16 is a contract with a professional services accounting organization. What's unusual about this is the reason it's on the agenda you don't discover until you come to the end of the item, which is the contract is actually with a recent former city finance director. And then finally, item number 20 is your list of nominations for the library board, and I would just like to hope that I would get added to that list of nominees, because I've been trying to get on the list for 14 years without success, and because that would give all of you, not just the 2 on the nominating committee, the opportunity to vote against me. So I hope to make it onto the list. Thank you.
That was good, Jim. Thanks. And if we have any other public comments on consent calendar, please head on up if we have any.
Hello, everybody. My name is Chris Benson. I'm from District 1. Speaking on commenting on number 4, the moorings. I haven't had a lot of time to come to the meetings, the previous ones, just because of the time constraints and growing a family here in Newport. Haven't had enough time to come to the previous meetings. I've been keeping track from afar from the NMA emails, and I've talked to former council member Diane Dixon about it, and she had said that you guys had no intent on changing rates or making any changes to the mooring area. And that's the last time I've heard about this. And then I got this email last night about what's going on number 4. Looking at it in the last, 24 hours, it seems really complex and something that doesn't need to be decided on. You guys are sitting on 687 feet right now if you add up all of the linear footage of all 14 moorings, right? These moorings go for about $1,000 a foot on Craigslist, right? That's how much I had to pay for mine. I have a 40-foot can. So instead of, you guys could scrap all this stuff, don't worry about it, write a new thing that allows anytime the city consumes a mooring, just put it on auction. You'll raise way more money. 687 feet times 1,000 right now, you're sitting on 687,000 feet. Some of the 60-foot cans, they're more rare for bigger boats, and that command, a higher dollar, that's like a $5 million yacht plus, those guys are going to bid up way higher. So just take that money every time something comes up, throw it up for auction, and then let those people just pay the rent that they do. They'll pay for the shackles, the tackle, and everything, just like I have to do for my mooring can. You don't need to adopt any new rules, change anything, except for the one rule to put it up for auction, right? Just raise the revenue on that and don't mess up and get all these people upset. Just take that into consideration. Also, in 2019, I fought the city of Huntington Beach successfully in court over the navigation shelter. They had forced this thing right next to my business. We took it to court. They didn't want to hear our opinion through meetings like this, and they railroaded this thing through. I crowdfunded all of my neighbors. We raised about $250,000, hired a law firm, and we fought them, and we won. We settled out of court, and the city had to pay us a bunch of money back. I'm prepared to do that if you guys continue down these routes of, changing the rules, giving us 72 hours notice, having meetings super, early like this in the evening. Even the mooring people don't even know about these meetings, right? They might not live in Newport Beach. The harbor master has everybody's email addresses. They send us invoices every month for rent. Why isn't there a requirement that if they're going to make a change in the harbor, that they send those proposed changes via email to us? Simple like that, right? Anyways, if you could just think about those things, maybe table this issue. If anybody in the crowd wants to talk to me about raising money, I talked to the lawyers today, and we need to raise about 10 grand. I'll put in 1,000, so I just need 9 more people, 1,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Yes, my name is Chris Webb. I'm a Newport Beach resident and tenant at the Balboa Yacht Basin, and I know agenda item number 9's been pulled, but I'd like to talk because I'm here, and that was sort of last minute. Okay. So I've been at Balboa Yacht Basin 10 years, and my family of 5, and I have a boat also in the marina, and we utilize our garage heavily for storage, as do most of your 30 tenants down there. So there was talk that the garages were outdated, from a different era, that boat owners don't need storage, and that there was a fire risk. There hasn't been a fire down there in 80 years. Those garages are a huge asset to the slip tenants that you have. I was on the wait list for years and years before I could get a garage at the basin. So it was a huge benefit to our family to get, that garage and be able to rent that from the city. So I know that there's a proposed redevelopment, but there's, impacts. And this, just like the previous speaker, there's been no discourse with stakeholders. None of your tenants were notified that there's a proposed redevelopment. There's businesses down there. You've got the galley. You've got a neighboring shipyard. You've got 30 tenants in the garages, plus tenants in the apartment above. And nobody really even knew that this was being proposed. So I guess my ask is that council reach out to its tenants and citizens to let them know that this is on the table and there may be a new development and we may lose our garages. So I view the marina as a historical, excellent use of space for the citizens. People go down there, hundreds of people every week use the galley restaurants, the garages, the parking. They're using their boats, they're walking the marinas, they're bicycling from there. So to just redevelop all that without talking to anybody, I just disappointed. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers on consent calendar items? Okay. Any other council comments? Seeing none, let's go ahead and vote.
Prior to reading the vote, I'll read the ordinance title for item 4, ordinance 2023-17, adding an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach, adding section 17.60.045 short-term mooring licenses to chapter 17.60 harbor permits and leases of the Newport Beach Municipal Code regarding short-term mooring licenses. The motion carries 7-0.
Wonderful. We're going for public comments on non-agenda items. Now would be the time if you want to talk about something that is not currently on our agenda. Seeing none. Let's move into the public hearing. Item 21, ordinance number 2023-18 and 2023-19, Tennis and Pickleball Club at Newport Beach, 1602. Thanks.
Good evening. Mayor, I am actually going to recuse myself on this item. I don't have direct conflict. I'll just say that I want to avoid any appearance of bias due to the work that my spouse's company does.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Assistant City Manager Simone Georges here, along with David Lee, who's a senior planner. Mr. Lee is going to go ahead and run through a very quick PowerPoint for you on a general plan amendment for the tennis and pickleball at Newport Beach. The applicant is also here, and they also have a presentation they would like to make to the City Council. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it to Mr. Lee.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. This is the Tennis and Pickleball Club at Newport Beach, 1602 East Coast Highway. Here's the project location on East Coast Highway. It's adjacent to the Newport Beach Country Club golf course, and the yellow is the property line of the project. It includes a tennis and pickleball club as well as a parking lot currently today. This is some project background. In 2012, there was a previous project that was approved by the City Council. It authorized the reconstruction of a tennis clubhouse, a 7 tennis court club, a 27-room boutique hotel with ancillary uses, and 5 detached single-family residences on the property. That approval included a 10-year development agreement and also a conversion of 17 courts to the 27 hotel rooms. In 2022, the applicant proposed an amendment to the project to add 1 tennis court and 14 hotel rooms, and with additional hotel ancillary uses. Also to convert 3 of the 5 single-family residences to attached condos. This project was approved originally September 8th, 2022 by the Planning Commission, and then on September 27th, 2022 and October 25th, 2022, the City Council reviewed the project and referred the project back to the Planning Commission to include pickleball as part of the project. The applicant revised the project and came back to the Planning Commission in March of 2023, which included pickleball, and it was approved by the Planning Commission. This is a table of the comparison between the previous project and the proposed amendment. As you can see, there's no change to the clubhouse. There is a change in the configuration of courts as well as the addition of 14 pickleball courts. There's 14 more hotel rooms for a total of 41, and those are the ancillary hotel uses highlighted in bold in the middle row. And finally, the conversion of the 3 single-family residences to attached condos with the 2 detached single families remaining. Here's a quick comparison between the previous plan and the proposed plan. And the main thing to take note of is the court configuration with the 4 tennis courts closer to the Granville residences to the north and the 14 pickleball courts on the plan there. So the project entitlements tonight include the legislative ones, including the general plan amendment to include pickleball use and the hotel rooms, a local coastal program amendment, and a planned community development plan amendment to amend the development standards to allow this project, and also a development agreement for the vested right to develop for a 15-year term, which is what the applicant is requesting. I want to give a quick background on the development agreement. In March of 2012 is when the first development agreement was approved with the original project, and that was for a 10-year term. In June of 22, the City Council approved a 1-year extension for that 10-year agreement. In March of 2023, the Planning Commission recommended to the City Council to approve a new 10-year development agreement with a CPI adjustment. After that Planning Commission meeting, the applicant requested a change from a 10-year term to a 15-year term to accommodate the timing of constructing the project. And finally, in September of 2023, that original DA from 2012 expired. I want to give a quick comparison of the development agreement's public benefit fees. The table on top is the previous DA, which is expired, and that was going to come out to a total of $502,250. The proposed development agreement for 15 years has been adjusted for CPI, and as you can see, that adjustment has resulted in a $685,000 public benefit fee. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Great. I think when we hear from the applicant, if everyone's okay with that first, great. We'll go ahead and hear from the applicant right now.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Jonathan Bailey. I'm the project manager for the MBCC Bungalow and Loft project, which we like to refer to as Plan B. As David pointed out, we refer to it as Plan B because it is an amendment to the Newport Beach Country Club Bungalow and Loft project that we had approved in 2012. This is the master site plan for Plan B. Up at the top, the Fairway Loft building is new. That is the building that has 13 hotel units and 1 of the attached condominiums. And then working our way down, the 2 single-family homes, what we refer to as villas, those are same from the original plan. And then all of the bungalows, which are labeled as 18 hotel units, those are the same as the original plan. On the interior of the plan, the building that is labeled with 9 hotel units and 2 of the attached condos is the bungalow loft building. That building is new. And then continuing to work our way to the right, the tennis clubhouse, tennis and pickleball clubhouse, spa and fitness center is the exact same as the original plan in 2012. The court configuration has changed In the original plan, 2012, we had 7 tennis courts. Now we have 4 tennis courts and 14 pickleball courts, including 2 new stadium pickleball courts, as shown in the middle of the plan. David had a similar exhibit to this. This is a summary of the approved plan from 2012 versus Plan B. As I just went over, 3 tennis courts have been reduced, and instead we have added 14 pickleball courts. There is 14 additional hotel units added to the plan, which are located in the loft buildings, the Fairway Loft and the Bungalow Loft building that I pointed out. And then we have some additional ancillary uses to the hotel, like performance therapy, the yoga pavilion, office, and some additional common area space that is located in those loft buildings. And the residences, there's still 5 residences as there was originally in 2012, but 3 of the villas, as we call them, or single-family homes, have been replaced with 3 attached condominiums that are also located in the new loft buildings. This is the view of Plan B from the 9th green. This is a schematic showing the bungalow loft building, which has 9 hotel units and 2 of the new condominiums. This is the first floor of the bungalow loft building. On the left, you can see some of the hotel units, and on the right are some of the ancillary uses that we have added, including the office, performance therapy, and the yoga pavilion. This is a schematic showing the Fairway Loft building. This is the loft building that is nearest to the tennis courts, and this building has 13 hotel units and 1 of the attached condominiums. This is the top floor of the Fairway Loft building. The top floor of the Fairway Loft building has the 1 condominium in the Fairway Loft building. So this is a floor plan of what that condominium would look like. This is a zoomed-in site plan of the new clubhouse, spa, and fitness center and pool. If I'm going too fast, let me know. This is what the pool attendant area would look like. So if you're going to the pool, this is where the pool boy or the pool girl would be, and you would pick up your towel or dispose of your towel. This is what the fitness desk area would look like. This is where you would check in for the fitness center or meet your trainer. This is what the new men's and women's locker room areas would look like. And on the left, it describes some of what would be included, including limestone tiles with white seashell borders, Venetian plaster, architectural concrete, and architectural obscured glass with vintage nickel hinges. This is a zoomed-in site plan of the court configuration. So you have the 4 tennis courts towards the top of the property, nearest to Granville. That is purposeful because tennis is, of course, less noisier than pickleball. So we strategically located the tennis courts there and put the pickleball courts more on the interior of the property. This is our plan for sound barriers for the courts. The blue line that you see coming down and across is where the sound barriers would go. The sound barrier specification we got directly from city staff. It is Anderson Special Industries, and this is the same brand and the same specification that the city uses at the public courts that you guys have. So the reason why, one of the biggest reasons why there was the delay from the time we went to Planning Commission on March 23rd to now in November, we're finally coming to City Council, is because there was an arbitration between applicant Gulf Realty Fund and our co-owners. And thankfully, I can now say that co-owner piece is at hand. Justice Icola oversaw that arbitration, and as part of his ruling, Gulf Realty Fund, applicant, was reconfirmed as managing owner. This reconfirmation of managing owner also included reconfirmation that the managing owner has broad power and authority per the owners in common agreement, which includes the ability to process these entitlements. Also, based on evidence, Plan B was deemed to be economically viable, and Grand Slam LLC was not removed as tenant operator of the current club. And the last bullet point I included because I had to send David this presentation earlier this afternoon. So at that point, we were on the 3-yard line with Brett and Ryan, our co-owners, for a new 10-year lease with Grand Slam to be the operator of the club. And I'm happy to say that an hour and a half ago, we actually crossed the goal line and are now in the end zone. And here I have a new signed 10-year lease with Gulf Realty Fund, with Sean, and with all of our co-owners. The benefits of Plan B. First benefit of Plan B is that it officially approves 14 pickleball courts. Right now, the current court configuration at the club is 31 pickleball courts and 16 tennis courts. However, none of those 31 pickleball courts are approved. As David pointed out, the current use of the property is for 24 tennis courts. So by Plan B being approved here tonight is we would lock in 14 pickleball courts as an approved use. And specifically in the city's March 7, 2023 letter, Jim Campbell stated that the pickleball courts, while they are not approved, can remain as is right now unless, quote, they become detrimental to the neighborhood. So essentially that would be something likely to do with noise or traffic. And then at that point, the city reserves the right to reduce the amount of pickleball courts that we have on site, given that they are not approved. And in conjunction with this, the Baldwin family at 24 Corporate Plaza has applied for a medical office conversion, which puts our current court configuration, the one in front of you tonight, of 14 pickleball courts and 4 tennis courts, in jeopardy if not approved. And the reason for this is because the 14 pickleball courts, it's not a random number. That is the maximum amount of pickleball courts that we were able to put on this plan without triggering a green light amendment. And so if we were to not be approved tonight and the Baldwin family comes before you in, I believe, December and has their plan approved for a conversion to medical office, that would further increase the allotment of trips that are automatically applied onto our property for green light purposes, which would make us further reduce the amount of pickleball courts that we could put on the plan and get approved without triggering the green light vote. So Plan B preserves the pickleball and tennis club for generations to come by locking in an approved use of 14 pickleball courts and 4 tennis courts. And then from a tax revenue standpoint, it will provide the city with roughly $1.5 million of annual tax revenue. Lastly, the 3 biggest reasons to approve Plan B tonight. 1, planning staff has spent hundreds of hours to make a unanimous finding to recommend approval. 2, Planning Commission gave unanimous recommendation for approval in March of this year. 3, this is the plan that managing owner of the property wants, and this is in the best interest of everyone for Plan B to get approved. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Guys, we're not going to do that tonight. Okay. We're going to bring it up here real quick. And you can go ahead and sit down. I'm going to chat with staff briefly. But I was actually surprised by a couple of those comments that were made that you want us to approve this so that somebody else doesn't get trips on a project they're looking to do right away. I do have some major reservations with a project that we're pushing back 10 years. I love the fact that we just signed a lease and it's going to be operating for 10 years. I think that's excellent. I'm not sure why we're extending a development agreement 15 years and it's already had it for 12. So we're at 27 years of a development agreement in the city that's tied up resources in which other things could have been built or developed in that area. And now we're asking to wait another 15 years before we start seeing any progress on this. So I have a number of issues with that. I was a little surprised to realize that we have another applicant coming in December with a trip count that's going to exceed the viability of this. Is that right?
No. So if this project goes forward and it gets approved, that project, the next project it's not a very big project. There's enough trips for them.
Okay.
But if it goes the other way, then this applicant will have to modify the project a little bit.
Got it. There's enough for them, but
The way the math works,
Not
they
the
go
other way
first,
around.
and then the other one goes second and works out.
okay. And my other piece with this project is in 12 years, why have we made no progress on it? And I understand there has been litigation, but we haven't moved forward with a plan. We don't have finished drawings. Nothing's been submitted as far as that piece goes. And I'm a little concerned about this project in general, and I'm even more concerned about tying up trips, facility, and housing units for 15 years because you guys want them now. My other piece is when you came before this council the first time, and we had a long talk about housing units when it comes to the RENA application, you fought the RENA application and allowing housing units on that property. And so now I'm just confused on how this has led to this path now. So I'm going to let some of my other council members speak, but I cannot be supporting this project. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I had a few questions also. And this is probably because we've had so much history with this project in the last 2 years. So Simone, I want to make sure I'm walking through this process to understand this. So this project has come to council it came to council a couple times last year. One of them, the whole place was packed with people to ask for the 1-year extension, but nothing happened in that 1 year other than a new project came forward, and a new development agreement has been requested.
That's correct.
Yeah. I mean, that was a really contentious meeting that we went through for nothing to happen. So that's not great. But now I'm trying to understand so we've got a development agreement that existed for 10 years, got extended a year, and now the request is for another 15. But it's technically a different project, but still on this parcel. Let's back up for a second, because I want to make sure I understand one of the points that the mayor was making, which is, and actually the applicant was making too, which is when we're talking about statistical areas in green light, we're saying that if we give a development agreement to anyone, we are taking those trips or those units or that square footage out of the calculation for that statistical area for anyone else to do anything else with their property without potentially triggering green light.
That's correct.
Okay. So for the last 11 years, this particular project under that development agreement took trips and square footage and a little bit of units out of this statistical area for any other property owner to want to, or to be able to develop without potentially triggering green light.
That's right. And my only caveat, council member, is that we track it for a 10-year period. After 10 years, it falls off.
Right. So in this case, but to be fair, that 10-year period. So wait a second. Let me see if I understand that correctly. So this, I understand we've tracked green light for 10 years, but that 10-year period. So if we had the development agreement, and then we go into the second 10-year cycle, that development agreement does not count for the second phase.
Those trips fall off. And that's why they call it a kind of a slow growth measure, because those trips actually fall off after 10 years, and then they come.
Even though they're not built.
Correct.
So in this case, by allowing it to lapse and now doing a new development, we're actually doing new green light calculations.
You're tying up trips, about 54 trips, 55 trips for that specific project, correct?
Okay, and then at the Planning Commission, I was reading the minutes here. The applicant said that their groundbreaking on this project will not begin until at least 2032.
That's my understanding.
That still true? You can come on up. Is 2032 still the answer? Because that was what you represented at Planning Commission, so I want to make sure I understood that.
Hello, everybody. Groundbreaking can occur when the tenant and our co-owners agree. A lot of people want the pickleball courts to stay the way they are. Sean needs to do a good job of converting them to realize that the new club has a fitness center, performance therapy, whatever. So right now, it's maybe 75% like those new improvements, and 25% want to leave it as it is. So the answer
I'm
is...
sorry, Robert.
The answer is...
It's pretty clear question. So the question is... Well, hang on. It's a clear question. The question is, you represented, actually, you didn't, but the gentleman who presented earlier represented the Planning Commission that this would not start and it would not groundbreak until 2032.
We would like it
As the answer changed between the time that representation was made to our Planning Commission, based, on which I think they relied a little bit on when they were talking about this, versus tonight, has it changed?
Yes, we have co-owners that are on board with Plan B in the hotel, and we would like the improvements to start earlier than that, but we also want to work with our members that like it the way it is and make sure that we have some kind of consensus.
Okay,
We're not just going to roll over them.
Okay. Yeah, it might be worth telling them that it's changed, because I think that they'd find that surprising. All right. So one of the other, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So one of the other questions I had was about the, so when we were dealing with Hogue, so we had this exact same problem where they wanted to have, they had a long tie-up in that statistical area for building that they hadn't built for, I don't remember what it was, 10 years, let's say. And then they came in for an extension, and the city council said, look, you're tying up valuable statistical area, we need an extension fee in addition to the development agreement. Has that been discussed at all on this project? Because to the mayor's point, we're now talking about potentially tying up for 26 years.
No, we haven't even discussed any type of extension fee at all. It was just a continuation of the fees that were negotiated back in 2012. And so there was no discussion about extension fees.
Okay. All right. I'll wait for public comment, but those are my questions.
Councilmember Weigand.
So until 2032, hypothetically, could it stay existing, the interim tennis courts and pickleball courts, meaning 16 tennis courts, 31 interim courts, or?
In theory, yes.
Okay, so there's
as far as the
there's no change to what's there today in the next 10 years.
Hypothetically, yes.
15 years, I guess, hypothetically. And then is this 15-year period, seems like Mayor Pro Tem O'Neill said Hogue was really the only one. Has there ever been anything that's been like this? Is there any other examples that?
So Mayor Pro Tem was talking about if there is a continuation of the development agreement, there was a fee for that extension. In this particular case, we haven't discussed an extension fee. We just carried the development fees and just added a CPI to it, but there wasn't an additional add of any extension to it. Generally, our development agreements are 10 years. We've made one exception up in the airport area for a 15-year development agreement with the Saunders project, Airport Village. But other than that, all the other development agreements are 10 years.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
All right, let's jump out to public comment on this item.
Mayor Blum, members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier. I have 3 comments. First, if you were going to go forward with this, it did seem there was something strange about the amount of the public benefit fee. If I understood the slide, 11 years ago, the public benefit was going to be $500,000 for protecting that entitlement for 10 years. And now here we are 11 years later, costs and things have gone up. And they're asking not for 10 years, but 15 years. And yet the $500,000 has only gone up to $686,000. How can that be? Doesn't make sense to me. Second comment is, if I recall correctly, when this was previously before the City Council last year or sometime, part of the hang-up at that time was we didn't think we properly understood the relative impact of tennis courts versus pickleball courts on parking and traffic. I have to admit I have not read this, so I don't know. Have we discovered the answer? Do we now know what the formula is? How does a pickleball court compare to a tennis court in terms of parking demand and trips that it generates? And then the third comment is about the proposed general plan amendment and its impact on green light. Again, I didn't read this, but I opened up staff report to page 21-36, which seems to be Exhibit A to the general plan amendment resolution. There's a table showing the proposed change. I'm glad to see it accurately shows what the general plan currently shows, because there was no general plan amendment in 2012. So the current entitlement is a clubhouse of 3,725 square feet, 24 tennis courts, and residences in accordance with a particular specification which allowed 5 residential units here. If this is the new general plan amendment, it kind of doesn't, to me, add up with what we saw in the presentation. I thought you were approving a 41-room hotel. I don't see any entitlement for that here. The point is, all of that is new. I don't know why it's missing from this table. That in itself is adding 41,000 square feet of development, because we count a hotel room as 1,000 square feet. So that alone would be triggering a green light vote. It seems to be, as I think I said in previous meetings, one hotel room too many. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Sure.
Based on the comments I'm hearing, if it would please Mayor and Council, we would be willing to revert back to a 10-year development agreement. So I would like to put that out there.
Any other public comments on this item?
Mayor and Council, my name is Robert Strother. I'm a resident of Newport Beach. I'm a member of TTC Pickleball and Tennis Club. And I want to tell you that I've looked at this stuff extensively, and I support Plan B unreservedly.
Thank you. Any other speakers on this before we bring it back up here? Seeing none? Back up this way. Mayor Pro Tem.
So it's back, and I'm struggling again with it. I guess the only good news is that we don't have people with pickleball paddles in the back of the council chambers anymore. One of the frustrations that I think some of us had when we were having this first vote was the idea that this had been on the books, taking up space for 10 years, and then we had the contentious vote over the one-year extension, which passed, I think it was 4-3. And now it's back. And now that it's back, at least Planning Commission was told it's not getting built until 2032. So we're now sitting with that on the books for another 8 to 9 years, assuming that the partners can come together after suing each other for years. I don't have faith that this is going to get built anytime soon. And I don't think it's a good idea from a planning perspective to extend this out, another 8, 10, 15 years, whatever it is. I also think that at this point, I don't know why we would treat a private developer better than we treated Hogue. When we talked about the extension fee on that one, it was not insubstantial, and it took a while to negotiate. And to be fair, we wanted to incentivize them to build there, which was one of the reasons we did the extension fee, but also it just didn't seem right to every other property owner that they would have less of their property rights because we didn't know if that would get built, and certainly hadn't been built in the prior 10 years, and we were trying to figure out whether it would get built again. While this is not a new DA, it certainly feels a lot like an extension. And so I think as a matter of planning, I struggle mightily with the idea that we should be tying this up at a property that is not proven to have the ability to put the shovels in the ground for the first 11 years, let alone the representation to Planning Commission that it wouldn't start until 2032. So I struggle a lot on any kind of development agreement without really showing proof that this is absolutely going to happen soon. Because I'd rather see other property owners, who actually want to do something with their properties, be able to do so without worrying about green light.
Councilmember Grant.
Thank you. I'm going to echo a concern of Mayor Pro Tem that, we have waited a long time for this project, but I would add to that we all want to see fruition on this site. It's been a long time, and there's been a lot of community engagement on it and a lot of planning, and so I'm wondering if there's a way that we can sort of massage what's going on here to make something happen. I certainly think that's the case in light of the fact that what's actually occurring on the property is an unpermitted use that's just gone on consistently since pre-pandemic, I guess. So, it's in all of our best interests, the city, the residents, and the property owner, to find a way to push forward. It sounds like from the consultant's presentation that when you spoke about a 2032 groundbreaking, you really weren't in the same position you're in now, and you're talking a lot more positively about your partners, your tenant, and sounds like, at least anecdotally from one of your club members, the club itself. I am struggling, as I mentioned, as the Mayor Pro Tem is, in finding out why you're still continuing. I mean, I heard you just back off on like 30% of the development agreement and coming back into 10 years, but even that seems like a long period of time. So maybe you have more to add about that, but 10 years to break ground on this project after we've been 10 years in, it doesn't really, it feels like there's a disconnect there.
Inviting me to speak on that? Okay. So we'll take whatever time you'll give us. We now have a historic peace agreement. Maybe we should move on next to the Middle East. So our co-owners are now on board. That never happened before. We have our previous co-owners were on board, but our newest co-owners were not. So we've struggled for 10 years back and forth with 4 arbitrations, over $10 million in legal fees. So that is now all in our rearview mirror. They're interested in moving forward with a hotel deal as soon as possible. We have many, many hotel operators that are interested in the property. So I believe we can move forward very fast. But we're also going to be sensitive to our pickleball members. We need to bring them along, the 25% that aren't on board with the new improvements, that want to leave it as it is. There's one other development that has happened, and that's Sean has a lease down at the Hyatt. He calls it TTC Newporter. I think there's going to be 24 pickleball courts down there. So there's now enough pickleball courts to go around and enough tennis courts to go around. So I believe that we are now finally in a historic place to move forward.
Councilmember Weigand.
Just quickly, I appreciate that additional information, but I would say that at this juncture, the city is not processing any applications for tenants for pickleball at the other locations. So, we're just looking at this project as a whole. But I understand the pickleball community is very invested in continuing as much operations as they can have. We here on City Council are working on that. We're adding some pickleball courts up in, public courts up in Newport Coast, thanks to the hard work of, again, Mayor Pro Tem O'Neill. But as far as I understand, we don't have any application for pickleball in another site in the city. So let's make sure that we represent that properly.
Sure. They've reached an agreement, though, between Hyatt and whatever. They've signed an agreement.
I think that's on tennis courts, though, isn't it?
It's on tennis courts, but they're going to process pickleball. You're right.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Weigand.
I see where Mayor Pro Tem is coming with this. I think I would be happy with an agreement to do it 2 years instead of 15, 10, whatever it be. But I think we can get this. If you seem to be pretty confident that there's a path forward here, but I think 10 and 15, that's just too long. So I think I'm supportive of 2.
Any other comments up here? Okay. I'm going to close the public piece of this, and you have a motion in a second?
I'll make a motion to approve this with the changes just to a 2-year development agreement. 2.
Only a second on that.
I'll second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro
Do we have an
Tem.
opportunity to present that to the property owner to see if that would be, no, okay. Sorry.
You can make an alternate motion if you'd like. Okay, well, let's vote on that.
Prior to reading the vote, I'll read the ordinance titles for Ordinance 2023-18, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach approving an amendment to the Newport Beach Country Club Plan Community Development Plan, PC 47, for the tennis and pickleball club at Newport Beach located at 1602 East Coast Highway, and Ordinance 2023-19, approving a development agreement, amended development agreement for the tennis and pickleball club at Newport Beach located at 1602 East Coast Highway, with Mayor Blom and Mayor Pro Tem O'Neill voting no. The motion carries 4-2.
Okay. Moving on. Item 22 is ordinance number 2023-20 and 2023-21 resolutions adopting housing element implementation, noise-related amendments, and resolution overriding Orange County Airport Land Use Commission's determination of inconsistency. Do any council members have a conflict?
Yes, I do. I've received campaign contributions exceeding $250, so must recuse myself.
Great. I'll send this back your way then.
I am here. Thank you, Mayor Blum and City Council members. I'm just going to give you just a brief overview, unless you want a full presentation. You had a pretty complete staff report. This agenda item is a public hearing item, and what we're doing is we're implementing the housing element. And to do that, we have to change the noise contours so we can move forward with all these housing opportunities. We're doing it now because we have some couple projects pending. There are not the RENA units. There are under the older general plan that we currently have. And if we don't move forward with the noise element now, those projects will just sit for another year until we implement fully our housing element, which will be done next year. So this is a general plan amendment to the noise element. We're making some changes to the land use element also. We did take this back to the Airport Land Use Commission. They voted that it was inconsistent. You did notify them of a potential override. Tonight's item is the general plan amendment to change the noise element with the new contours, plus it is the override. To override the inconsistency that ALEC determined. We're not affecting the cooperative agreement with the county. We're not affecting the settlement agreement with the airport. And the council has every right under the Public Utilities Code to do the override with ALEC. I can go on more, but I'm happy to answer any further questions that you may have.
We have any questions up here? Should we just go to the public? Let's go to the public on this item.
Mayor Blom, members of the council, my name again is Jim Mosier. This item I did read and spent considerable time looking through it and suggested if you were going to go ahead with it, some what I think would be helpful amendments or corrections to it, which apparently are going to be totally ignored. If you read my comments, you also I believe going ahead with it is a bad idea for at least 3 reasons. Number one, it appears from the response from the airport, this is antagonizing the airport and the county whose cooperation we very much depend on for controlling expansion of the airport. Number two, I just think it's wrong to be putting people in high noise areas. And number three, especially crazy in here, is the idea that somehow we treat a property that some tiny little sliver of it is outside the 65 decibel contour, that the whole property then can be treated as if it was all outside of that contour. I can't see any logic to that. Somewhere on that property could be super high noise levels, and yet this still would say it's okay to develop there. Proposing such illogical legislation in our general plan, in our municipal code, does not make sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers on this item?
Mayor and council members, Jim Oster, live in Bayview, Santa Heights, and we've been opposed to this noise map revision and any housing development in the 65 decibel zone. I'd like to ask you to consider an amendment to the proposal that would delay any development within the 65 decibel zone until all other sites with lower impact are developed to meet the housing mandate. There's no reason to start with these high impact 65 decibel zones with the highest risk of noise, safety, and pollution from airport activities. The runway, John Wayne, is only 5,700 feet, which is the shortest runway in the entire United States for any commercial airport. We know what it's like landing on that short runway. It's something like, imagine landing on an aircraft carrier, slamming on the brakes. And, fortunately, no runway incursion or whatever, breaching the runway has occurred. If that ever does occur, which it does seem possible, it would seem the FAA would require the runway extension that has been planned for the back nine of the golf course. If that happens and the runway extension does happen, which certainly has been considered, the housing that you're proposing on the front nine and other sites in the 65 decibel zone will be in a higher decibel zone than is conceivable for residential use. Please consider postponing any of that development till the very end as a last resort if necessary to meet the mandate. Hopefully, by then, the mandate requirement will be canceled either politically or in the courts, and none of this development will happen, but we're asking you to postpone that development as long as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back up here. I'll go ahead and make a motion to move staff recommendation on this. I have a second from Mayor Pro Tem. Let's go ahead and vote.
Prior to reading the vote, I'll read the ordinance titles for Ordinance 2023-20, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach approving an amendment to Title 20, Planning and Zoning of the Newport Beach Municipal Code related to noise in the airport area necessary to implement the sixth cycle housing element, and Ordinance 2023-21, and approving amendments to Newport Place Plan Community Development Plan PC 11 and Newport Airport Village Plan Community Development Plan PC 60 related to noise in the airport area necessary to implement the sixth cycle housing element. The motion carries 6-0.
Wonderful. Moving on to item 23, resolution number 2023-74, consider water and sewer rate adjustments.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, City Council members.
may remember, we've presented several pieces of information here back in August and September. Since then, we have mailed over 25,000 public notices to every property owner and customer of our water and sewer service. We have a very detailed staff report, but we're here to present and open a public hearing to see if there are protests regarding the proposed water and sewer rates, and the city clerk will be reading off some specific language. We've talked about the need for the water and sewer fund, our operations, our maintenance, our capital improvement programs, and we're here to ask you for what's basically a regular occurrence, which is updating the rates to keep up with inflation. And I'm happy to answer any other questions or a presentation if you'd like. Thank you.
Any questions up here? No? We're well versed in this one. Beautiful. We'll jump out to the public on this item. I wasn't just looking at you, Jim, but you've been given such a good stand-up routine so far. I figured you probably had another joke in you. All right. No public comments on this. We'll bring it up here. I have a motion on this. Brad, you love...
Mayor, I need to just make a quick announcement. The city did receive one protest from a property owner and none from non-property owner customers, and that in absence of a majority of valid protests, which should have been 13,568, the city council could adopt a resolution that established the water and sewer rates and charges.
Thank you. Did you want to make the motion?
I
Brad?
would.
You're all things sewer in this city is what I heard.
Well, both water, let's just call it. It all becomes water.
Excellent. I love it.
Yeah.
I have a motion. I have a second. Sure, I'll second it. Let's go ahead and vote.
The motion carries unanimously, 7-0.
Moving on to item 24, adding, amending, and repealing provisions of the Newport Beach Municipal Code and City Council policies. I see we have a packed house for one of the most substantial things that we've done in a long time. That's great. Wonderful. We recently considered this matter as study session. Do any council members need a staff report of any kind? No, I didn't think so. All right, so let's...
Can we go through it again?
Yeah, I'll send you the book. Jim said he just finished it. Let's go out to public comments on this item.
Mayor Blum, members of the council, my name is Jim Mosher. I did not read the 1,000 or more pages of this. If you read my written comment, I think you have some idea of my opinion of the council doing this, and I do hope that in the future, this council or a future one will consider a single subject rule so that the people actually know what you're enacting. I did read the policy part of this from PB&R. I made some minor suggestions to that, which I think are probably valid, but again, it appears that they're going to be totally ignored, which impresses upon me the futility of reading the other 1,000 pages of this. If you wanted me to, I can read part of it, which I did not read before, but you don't have to go very far to question why the council is doing this. If I go to the first page of the redlining, I see that you're being asked, where we previously had copies of the municipal code in a form that the clerk kept up to date. It looks like all paper copies of this are going away. And there will be a copy kept at the office of the city clerk. If you're trying to do that, shouldn't you, in here somewhere? And this is not cleanup, this is changing city policy, which was not the intent of this effort. Shouldn't the new policy be requiring somebody to keep an online copy of it if you no longer have paper copies? Why are you not doing that? I can repeat the comment I made at the last study session, which apparently, like everything else, is being totally ignored. I'm looking at page 24-517, authority of designated officials, it used to say. This has authority of deputies, it used to say. And it now says any department director, official, employee, or whatever can delegate the responsibilities that the code places in them to any city position or to another person. And we're redefining person as most anybody. It could be a corporation. It doesn't have to be somebody who even lives in this country. There could be, why are we doing that? Those are 2 pages, and I think there's, I don't know, many hundreds of pages of redlining. I think this is the total opposite of transparency and good government. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem? Were there any other comments out there? I'll bring it back. Mayor Pro Tem?
This will not shock anyone. I do not agree with that last statement. And in fact, this has been put out there, well, much longer than we normally would for this exact purpose. But I will say that this will be the first year that I've been on council where we will end a year with a smaller municipal code than when we started. I think that's pretty cool. And so I'd like the honor of making the motion to approve staff recommendation.
Wonderful motion, and I'm going to give it to Councilmember Kleiman because they actually did all the reading. I just showed up at the meetings.
You look
wonderful.
Wait a second, I did all the reading too.
You did as well. You did. Well, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and vote.
Prior to reading the vote, I'll read the ordinance title for Ordinance 2023-22, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach adding, amending, and repealing various provisions of the Newport Beach Municipal Code. The motion carries 7-0.
Madam Clerk, please read the announcement for motions for reconsideration.
A motion to reconsider the vote on any action taken by the City Council at either this meeting or the previous meeting may be made only by one of the council members who voted with the prevailing side.
Are there any motions for reconsideration? Seeing none, tonight we're going to be adjourning in memory of 2 people, James Purdy, that Mayor Pro Tem is going to take care of, and Peter Shea, that Councilmember Wygant is going to speak on.
So Jim Purdy passed away in his sleep in the early morning hours of Saturday, October 21st, in his residence in Newport Beach next to the love of his life, Deborah Purdy. They were married for 40 years. According to his sons, Spencer and Travis, in his final days, their dad was swimming 4 times a week. He would come home and say, got 1,600 in, meaning 1,600 yards or roughly a mile. He loved his walks in the morning above Big Corona with their mom, always coming home to inform his sons that, quote, looks like there's some swell in the water. Although he was never a Newport Beach lifeguard, both of his sons were, and he absolutely loved the department and the people in it. He always loved having his sons home and near him. He wanted to know what they were doing, how the days were, and let them know how much he loved them. Jim's spirit and memories stand tall like the many buildings he created as a brilliant architect, such as, in fact, the Newport Beach Central Library. A service was held for James Lawson Purdy on Thursday, October 26th at Our Lady Queen of Angels Catholic Church. In lieu of flowers, the Purdy family suggests to make a donation to the Ben Carlson Foundation.
Tonight we adjourn in memory of Newport Beach resident Peter Shea, who passed away in October at the age of 88 after battling Parkinson's disease. Peter was a leader in the fields of construction, home building, and commercial real estate, who served as president of J.F. Shea Construction and vice president of J.F. Shea Co. Peter was born and raised in Los Angeles. He earned a bachelor's degree in business from UC Berkeley and a degree in civil engineering from USC. Peter and his wife Carolyn were married in 1964, and the couple spent most of their married life here in Newport Beach. Peter joined his family business in 1961 after spending his early years around the construction sites. The J.F. Shea Company was renowned for its work on the Golden Gate Bridge, Hoover Dam, and the interstate highway system. Peter joined as co-owner and vice president of J.F. Shea Company and later served as president of its heavy construction subsidiary, J.F. Shea Construction. Peter led every Shea heavy construction project and left his mark on the industry through innovations and improvements in the company. that the company achieved under his leadership. Alongside his cousin and brother, Peter helped expand the Shea's organization to include heavy construction and one of the nation's largest privately held home building and real estate development companies, Shea Homes and Shea Properties. Peter was also passionate as an accomplished golfer who played almost every major course in the United States and many international courses up until his 80s. His addiction to his love of golf will be remembered for his kindness, simplicity, competitiveness, and humor. Our services were held this past Saturday in Newport Beach. Thank you.
Thank you. We are adjourned.